What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Took a sec for the wheels to get in motion there after I clicked go. Was just staring at the screen, waiting for the little light to tell me that I was actually live. Pretty sure I am. Hopefully I am, because we got to do a lot of talking in a hurry because it's already 3 o'clock. Wanted to get started at 2:30 today. Didn't quite make that deadline. But we've got a 6:05 lock on our hands tonight for a 7-game slate on both sites. Early start by an hour, but confident we'll get through it. Try and get us all out of here as usual, like an hour or so ahead of lock. So right around 5. Fortunately, it's not a huge slate, but definitely a lot of things to talk about. And I figured we'd just keep the board up and kind of dive right into this one. Hopefully everybody's having a good Thursday so far. Cujo's here. Stephen B., Travis Wyndham, Andy Melman, Lone Wolf. What's going on, gang? Good to see everybody. Hit the old like button, the subscribe. Check out our pals over at acemine.io. Sure, everybody who's already here knows the drill. We'll remind some people later on. But to dive right in, again, 6:05 lock time. So, a lot to get through. There's my runs tab. Some interesting games on deck. Another 6-run total. Quite notably for the Red Sox. Yet again, just monster numbers coming up in Fenway. That Athletics-Red Sox series has produced some interesting results DFS-wise. I think it is a spot we can go back to and look at again with the Sox over 6, with the A's on their side pulling in a 4.11. But to start things off, another Dodgers-Phillies game up at the top. It's Landon Knack going for the Dodgers. Looks a lot more targetable than Aaron Nola does on the other side. Not that we necessarily want to use Nola to be targeting the Dodgers all that much. But when you talk about targeting the Dodgers, you want to at least do it with a very high-end pitcher, and Aaron Nola definitely fits that bill. So he's usable. It's just 4.18 on the other side. The Dodgers, against a lot of more mortal pitchers, can definitely be up a lot higher than that in terms of runs. So we'll consider it. We'll take a look at where he's priced compared to the rest of the board. 4.91 implied total for the Phillies against Landon Knack feels a little bit more obvious, a little more clear-cut. We had no Bryce Harper in the lineup yesterday after his initial return from the injury. He injured his hand, just a bruised hand in the game on Tuesday night. Didn't play yesterday, but did take batting practice. I would expect that he's going to go today, but we'll keep an eye out for that Phillies lineup. That obviously makes a big difference, but you know that the Phillies can go off without him in the lineup anyway. Getting huge monster power numbers for Kyle Schwarber once again. Harper's up over the magic number, so targetable Phillies team. Second game up, the Cubs and the Orioles, a 4.50 implied total on the Orioles side. It's Justin Steele going for the Cubs. It's Albert Suarez on the mound for the Orioles. 4.09 implied total for the Cubs, 4.50 on the Orioles side. Shane Baz taking the mound for the Rays, facing the Yankees. Moderate total for the Yanks, 4.33 implied. They've been very up and down as far as offense goes. We know they've got some major ability. They're showing some power against some lingering trends for power that Baz has given up in previous samples. He's only made one start in the show this year, but he did end up going 6 innings when we were expecting a little bit lighter of a workload in that one. So it's an interesting spot to consider him. Yankees a little bit more gettable, definitely some strikeouts there. And then on the mound for New York, it's Nestor Cortes, who is fine. Nestor's okay, but he's no ace. He's no fantasy ace, but we'll give him some consideration against the gettable Rays lineup. The aforementioned A's and Red Sox game, we've got Luis Medina going for the A's, looking very, very targetable in terms of the bats on the other side. Not sure how playable Medina is in this hitting environment. He hasn't been completely awful in several different starts this season, but this seems like a pretty threatening spot DFS upside-wise. Going for the Red Sox, Tanner Houck, the best pitcher listed so far, going up against gettable Oakland team at worst. They are pulling some interesting run numbers again. They have some bats that are a little bit more threatening in that lineup that we've been talking about the past few days. But Houck has been pretty good through this season. He hit a couple bumps lately, but overall he's been very, very strong, and he's pretty good at keeping the ball in the yard. Into the next spot, we've got Roderi Munoz taking on the Houston Astros, who have Jake Bloss on the mound. I believe it's Jake. Seems to be some consensus around Jake, although Fangraphs had it as John. So not entirely sure what this guy's name is, but the Jake that I've got here made one start already for Houston, so I'm assuming it's him. 3 2/3 on the 21st. the 21st of June. Struck out 2, gave up 2 earned runs. Not the greatest minor league track record, but we'll give him a look because it is a good matchup against Miami. And then the Astros bats pulling in a 4.93 implied total, number 2 on the board behind the Phillies and the Red Sox. One of the top-ranked teams on the fantasy board today up on rotoscouts. Looking pretty strong there. Just a 3.67 implied total on the Marlins side. The Mariners with a 4.81 total. They're kind of an interesting one. They're going to be taking on Jack Kochanowicz, who is pitching for the Angels, and then coming back the other way, we've got Luis Castillo on the mound for the Mariners. Could be a situation where the Mariners total is juiced up a little bit just because Castillo is a bigger favorite against the Angels, so they're just mathematically pulling a little bit more of that number. It has been a very gettable Mariners team that I don't love using all the time, but in the right situation, and when this does look like the right situation in terms of that Vegas run total, an inexperienced pitcher on the mound who had a 20% strikeout rate in Double-A and has never pitched above Double-A, I think it's a spot we could at least consider some Mariners. Round things off with a really good pitching matchup out in the desert. It is Max Fried going for the Braves and Brandon Pfaadt going for the hometown Diamondbacks. 4.12 implied total for Atlanta, 3.98 implied total for the hometown D-backs. Does look like another night where we might be able to reserve a little pitching for the very end of the evening. 8-run total on the board in that one, and fairly close in terms of the Vegas line. Looks like we have no weather concerns. Everything on Ross' board was green. We've got all those games in the past few days where the wind has been blowing out, continues to be blowing out. Warm nights continue. Looks like a targetable day for bats. The home run board's actually kind of interesting today. We've got a few guys at monster numbers, and then just a couple guys right in the 10 range with a few just under, but it thins out really quickly. Peaks high, but not crazy in a lot of ways. Top of the pitching slate, Tanner Houck against the Athletics. Even with the hitting conditions favoring hitting a little bit, Houck has been good enough to, I think, to justify that spot. 10-2, 9,500 across sites. If you like one of the other options better, you're taking a discount to get there. So no issues making pivots, but I really think Houck has an opportunity to succeed and to potentially run away with the slate, because a lot of the other high-end pitchers like Nola against the Dodgers, not necessarily great. Brendan Pfaadt against Atlanta, not necessarily great. Castillo is probably the strongest contender, the number 2 projected pitcher. He only costs $9,300, $9,200, so you're taking a very nice discount on FanDuel, a couple $100 on DraftKings. Castillo, equally high-end, established-wise, he's higher-end coming into the season than Tanner Houck. He's just hit a few more bumps this season than we might normally expect. Had a handful of 4-run games to start the season off, and then a couple along the way. He's mostly kept teams to just 2 runs for the bulk of his starts. But when problems have crept up, it's been more like 4 or 5 runs in a few of these. But overall, good matchup. Luis Castillo still very good. Nestor Cortez, I don't love him for DFS, but he's very cheap at $8,300 on DraftKings. It's easy to afford. It's easy to put him in lineups. And again, it is a very gettable Tampa Bay team. He could certainly give you 6 innings he could give you 6 innings on FanDuel for your $9,200. Come away with the quality start. Come away with the W on the right day. So he's in play on both sides. He's just not my favorite option. Nola, just a tough matchup for a very good pitcher. That's baked into the $8,600 on DraftKings. Less so on FanDuel. You're kind of paying full price. I guess against some other teams, Nola could come in at $10K. Remains very, very good. No issues with playing him really against the Dodgers. And honestly, if you get him at a little bit lower ownership for the matchup, that is beneficial. Especially on DK, if you're piling lower ownership on top of a lowered price. Becomes really appealing over there. But again, just a tough matchup. That said, it is a lesser version of the Dodgers than what they started the season with. Pfaadt against Atlanta, those prices look pretty appealing. Atlanta is showing a decent amount of power going the other way, but he really hasn't had crazy issues with the home runs this year like he did at the beginning of last season. So I think he's just inexpensive against an Atlanta team that has not been as good as they were last year. Kind of an appealing spot at those prices. Probably the first pitcher that I have any kind of faith in as far as like the cheaper guys to make something work at price. 81 is a pretty significant discount from everybody else in this group on FanDuel, and it's the same thing. 73 stands out among these top-tier pitchers on DraftKings. Justin Steele, very good at suppressing offense. Could be a situation where, more it lands in the middle, allows a couple of runs, but not a big DFS day to the Orioles hitters. They take a few runs off of him, but don't have a big DFS day against, and vice versa. So playable, but threatened. $8,000 though is a very cheap price for Justin Steele. Max Fried, 91.88, reasonably priced for a guy who could come out there and pitches deep into games. Any given slate, he could give you a nine inning complete game shutout type start. Maybe it won't get to that level, but 7 innings is on the board, limited runs, handful of strikeouts. It's usually where the rubber meets the road with Max, is what the strikeout total looks like. But for the pricing, you could definitely do worse. Little bit of a projection gap. It's more pronounced on FanDuel. It's not huge, but there's a gap there between Fried and Albert Suarez going up against the Cubs. 8,300 and on DraftKings only 6,900. Definitely in play for some value shares. Definitely in play for some SP2 shares at a discount on DraftKings. Going to be worth considering and worth a pretty lengthy look. Baz, I do, considering that we got 6 the last time out, I do think he's playable against these Yankees. 8,000 on FanDuel. I'd probably just rather have Brandon Pfaadt at 81 against the Braves, but it's fairly close on talent. Baz is a very good pitcher when he's healthy. On DraftKings at 7,200, easily in the mix as a value guy. It's kind of the same situation there. I would just probably prefer more often than not an extra 100 there. But if you're building a bunch of lineups, you can go one into that one into this one, and just keep going back and forth. One for you, one for me kind of a thing. It wouldn't also be the craziest thing in the world to just combine those guys. If you wanted to go, cheap at pitcher, that's not a bad combo to use. 73, 72, you could mix Suarez into that same mix and save even more. And I mean, leaving Tanner Houck on the table against Oakland, Luis Castillo on the table against the Angels is a little bit concerning, but it's not like we've got an abundance of aces on this slate. It's not like these two are, throw away the key type of, there's no way that anything else is going to matter. We don't care about any other plays. These guys, it's going to be one of these two guys. They're not really that level of pitcher, even in good matchups, and especially with hitting conditions working against Houck. It is a little bit more reasonable to believe that you could go in this kind of a direction with like a one and then one of these guys type combo and be all right. Obviously, you still need to fade those good days from the top pitchers. Landon Knack going against the Phillies, not really seeing it. Phillies bats are drawing a little bit of upside. Roderi Munoz pretty much a no against Houston. Jake Bloss against Miami is a little bit tough to believe in. And Luis Medina against the Red Sox, and Jack Kochanowicz for 4,000 on DraftKings. Doesn't really project well, but only comes in at 4,000. All of those guys are value darts at the bottom on a somewhat short slate. I think everything is kind of playable because the prices aren't egregious. Everything landed on the pitching board, at least, in a playable point, not mispriced for what they are today. It's going to be a fun run to break down as we get into the game by game, which we can do right now. Kochanowicz 4 at 11 the chips. I don't know what you mean, Cal. Sounds like you like Kochanowicz. Anthony Taylor's here. What's up, Ant? Travis Wyndham just noticed the early start time. Yep, 6:05 lock. We had to get rolling early. Gonna power on through. So first game up, we've got Landon Knack on the hill for the Dodgers. A lot of offense showing for the Phillies side of things. Bryce Harper in the lineup, by the way. We do have the confirmed lineup here. Schwartz and Harper both way over the magic number for home run upside against Knack. Knack has given up a 5.04% home run rate so far this season, which is pretty significant. We're way over 90 there. We're way over 40 there. We're way over 10 there. It's a 20-degree average launch angle. This dude is just a fly ball with home run upside in the making. 2.86 ERA does not match this kind of premium contact, that kind of home run rate. That's kind of revealed by the 4.27 xFIP underneath. And honestly, even that could probably be a little bit higher given the amount of power and home runs he's given up. Not that xFIP reflects home runs, but the expectation for the actual runs that he might eventually end up giving up could be even higher. That said, a .98 whip is pretty good. A 22.3% strikeout rate is fine. 10.5% swinging strikes. The Stuff Plus rating likes him slightly above average. He's very cheap. It's just good Phillies lineup. Bryce Harper back. Bunch of good lefties in this lineup. Some power, some speed. One of the best teams in baseball, if not the best team in baseball. Very good run creators in their home park, which is a hitter-friendly park, in hitter-friendly conditions on a warm day with the wind blowing out. Most of that doesn't really add up to, let's play some Landon Knack for 7,500, 7,400. So I don't think we're going there outside of if you really get desperate for dart throws or if you really get desperate to make a differentiated contrarian kind of a lineup. That's really the only place where you're going to Landon Knack. I really don't see it on FanDuel. For that kind of a salary, he's completed the 6th inning one time this year, and it was back on April 24th. It's been a minute. He's made 3 starts, the 21st, 28th, and the 4th in his most recent run. Went 5 innings on the 21st, struck out 2 and walked 2. No runs, 2 hits over 19 hitters in 5 innings. Faced 19 at the Giants over 4 2/3, struck out 7, gave up a homer, 5 hits. Most recent game against Arizona, struck out 6, walked 1, but gave up 3 home runs, which amounted to 4 earned runs on 4 hits total over 4 1/3, faced 18 hitters. The game back on April 24th might have been his best of the year. He did go 6, got the quality start, gave up 2 earned on 3 hits, struck out 5, walked 3, gave up a homer. It's about what you're getting out of Landon Knack more often than not, so looks like a danger spot for him. Going the other way, Nola, much more appealing. 23.8% strikeout rate. We've definitely taken a dip in strikeouts. It was 25.5 last year. It was way higher, 29.1 the year before. But other than the Ks, he's very much still a good high-end pitcher. And it's not like this is a totally weak strikeout rate that he couldn't find a few additional ones on the right day against, even a lineup that has low strikeout hitters in it. There are high strikeout total hitters to target for him in here as well. So I could see him coming away with a solid handful of Ks, coming away with 7-8 clean innings or 6-7 clean innings. A 3.48 ERA, a 3.33 xFIP, 5.6% walks is nothing. 103 whip is terrific. Good swinging strike rate. The CSW could improve. That's also come down somewhat over the last couple of years. But it's not like it's caused him to walk hitters. He's just lost some strikeouts on the edges. Not giving up anything really in terms of premium contact, though he's lost a few home runs. That could normalize. That amounts to a little bit of happenstance. Most recent start, he gave up 2 home runs. That was against the Braves at Atlanta. That can happen. Struck out 8 in that one. 3 earned runs on 5 hits over 6. Got the quality start. Booked the win bonus. 3 earned runs on 6 hits over 6 2/3 against Miami. The start before that, struck out 9. Also gave up a homer in that one, but another quality start. They did not win that game, but that's not his fault. 7 innings against Detroit. 1 earned run on 6 hits. Struck out 6. Got the win. Got the quality start. We're working on 4 straight quality starts. Really only had 1 major blow up this season. It came in the game before that run. It was against the Red Sox at Fenway. 3 2/3, 8 earned runs, 11 hits. Week 1 there. Obviously, it's a comparable opponent in the Dodgers on the other side, but that one rough spot against a good team doesn't mean that any game against a good team we abandon ship. Full confidence in Aaron Nola in any situation. On FanDuel, again, you're not really getting the price discount. 9,500 is correct-ish. Maybe it's 200-300 off of what he would be against a neutral team, middle of the road kind of a team. On DraftKings, I feel like he's gotten a bit more of a discount. A little bit more of a discount for the strikeouts, probably drying up a little. Very playable option. I think anybody who does it knows that they are potentially walking into some danger given the opponent. If we're taking a look at Lone Wolf saying load up on Phillies, I think that makes some sense. If we're taking a look at the bats, we can start with the Phils, although we did just get the Dodgers lineup, so let me start there with the road team. Come on. Hang on one second. Let me call. You can hear him in the other room. He's scratching again, I think. Talked about that yesterday. It's the worst. This hot weather's got to go. Anyway, Dodgers bats. Shohei Ohtani at the top as usual. 6,500, 4,700. Dude is ridiculous. 28 home runs, 21 stolen bases, a 321 ISO, 188 WRC plus, 13.07 to lead the team in the home run model. Could definitely take Aaron Nola out of the park. No reason to think that Ohtani can't succeed. You're just paying a monster premium for him. Closing in on a mediocre pitcher price on DraftKings. 4,700 is aggressive on FanDuel as well. I'm sure he's the most expensive pitcher on either site, or player on either site rather. But there's no issues with going to him. You're just paying for the luxury of having him. Will Smith is a tremendous catcher. 5,800, 3,600 across sites. 15 home runs for him. A 348 on base. 226 ISO. He hits for power. He gets involved in run creation. He's always on base. He plays basically every day and hits second every day at a fair price on both sites. 58, where you need to play catchers for a quality bat like Will Smith, that's a not bad price. I know it's expensive, right? In a vacuum just across the slate, that is a very expensive price. But for the quality that you get at that position, by comparison to a lot of other catchers that are available on most slates, say Garrett Stubbs on the other side at half the price, you've got a lot of additional upside in Will Smith. So it always is worth at least considering. And when you're stacking Dodgers, you most certainly want to have some Will Smith in there. Freddie Freeman for 56.38, slashing 299, 403, 501 with a 203 ISO, creating runs 55% better than average. Who's better than Freddie Freeman? He's tremendous. 15.4% strikeouts, 13.4% walks this year. Who does that? 10.1% barrels, 41% hard hits. Absolutely love the bat. Even if you wanted to take a non-Ohtani approach and go like Freeman, Smith, and Teoscar, you could even dip down and include a couple of these guys given the lineup that they put together today. Like Pages is always interesting. James Outman is kind of interesting. So there's ways to build. Not that you too many times want to forgo Shohei Ohtani at the top of the Dodgers lineup when you're going to them against Aaron Nola. But I do think there are good bats down through here, and it makes that much more affordable. Like if you just wanted to straight line that, you can include Rojas in that combination there. That becomes a Dodgers stack that does have Freddie Freeman and Teoscar Hernandez in addition to Andy Pages, Miguel Rojas, and James Outman for just $4,200 apiece, a $21,000 total for your five guys. That's not terrible price-wise, even for the idea of using these guys to target a pitcher like Aaron Nola. So they're not uninteresting given the ways that you can put them together. You get a little more positional flex to do the same thing on FanDuel. But obviously the top four are the most appealing bats in this lineup where all the pricing is. Teoscar's got 19 home runs, a 223 ISO, a 126 WRC plus. Absolute masher, but definitely strikes out a lot. 27.9% this year, 31.1 last year. Strikeout target for sure for Aaron Nola. Andy Pages is another strikeout target, 24.7% on the season. Lost a ball on the lights in a key spot last night. Back in the lineup today. He's got 8 home runs. He's got a 146 ISO. The ISO could improve. The premium contact has been really good, but it's starting to crumble a little bit around the edges after his really strong start. We need to see him pick it back up in terms of getting on base, picking up some hits, keeping the power consistent, just putting bat on ball. The power will come. But that ISO's got to go up. The WRC plus is right at league average now. But he's only 3,800, 2,800, so he's a key into Dodgers stacks as far as just lowering the average cost. Rojas at shortstop, not ideal given some other appealing shortstops available, including one on the other side of this game. But he's had a good 182 plate appearances, 286, 331, 435, creating runs 18% better than average. He's a mix and match piece. Outman, like I said, is interesting. I was expecting him to have a better season. He's made only 133 plate appearances, but he had a really slow start after I think there was a lot of expectation on him as a 2020 potential kind of a player from the left side, and really hasn't delivered on that. 3 homers, 2 steals in his 133. Sub Mendoza, sub 300 on base, significantly below 300 on base. And that's true for him, Chris Taylor, and Gavin Lux at the bottom of the lineup. 263, 265, and 262 on base percentages. WRC plus marks of 60, 56, and 58. Mix and match pieces across the board in the last 3 spots for the Dodgers, and really the last 4 spots, if not 5. But they are usable parts. Going to the Phillies side, Schwarbs. Did I not update I think I forgot to update the stats again. Just the dashboard. Because Schwarbs, I think, should have 18 home runs now. He hit one yesterday. Do that real quick. Talk amongst yourselves. Again, for people who missed it when I forgot to update this the other day, that just means that the stats that I read you for the Dodgers just now are 1 day. Those are yesterday's numbers. And it affects nothing on the back end. This is just cosmetic for doing the show. Hit the like and the subscribe while you're here. If you missed it earlier, acemine.io for all your sim and optimization needs. Promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, gets you 20% off your first month of their already industry-leading low pricing. As far as sim and optimizer sites go, nobody compares price-wise. Yeah, 18 home runs now for Kyle Schwarber. Hit one last night as I believe it was a leadoff home run, at a similarly ridiculously high home run mark in the model. It was lower yesterday, but it was similar. I think he comes right back with a really good chance at hitting another one today. We already talked about Knack and his ridiculously high home run rate and all this absurd amount of premium contact he's allowed. Throwing that kind of a softball up to Schwarber and to Harper is pretty dangerous. You've also got a guy named Trey Turner hitting in between those two guys. He's slashing just 345, 389, 516 this year with a 156 WRC plus. He's hit 8 home runs. He's stolen 11 bases in just 239 plate appearances. Absolutely tremendous at shortstop. He is one of the reasons why you don't necessarily want to occupy your shortstop spot, especially if you're building one lineup, with a guy like Miguel Rojas. Rojas, again, is playable. He's cheap, but he's a very different kind of commodity at a key position with some outstanding superstar talent like that. Schwarbs and Harper, the two lefties, are no-brainers, especially when they come in at 56 and 57 on DK, 37 and 39 on FanDuel is probably a little closer to the relative mark. Not that these prices are, again, cheap. It's the same situation as it was on the other side. They're very high prices, but you could have easily priced either one of those guys at 6,000 against this pitcher, and I would have been fine with it. Alec Bohm for just 5,300, a little bit of a discount to his friends there, but still pricey enough. 3,400, same thing on FanDuel. He has done everything he needs to do to justify these prices, though. 292, 343, 481 this season. 129 WRC plus. It's absolutely tremendous option. First and third base eligible on both sites, and again, it does, if you get a little bit of help out of that price, you can include him over Harper if you need to. You can include him over Schwarbs if you need to. Different positions, obviously. That's not what you're rushing out to do. You'd like to get all three of those guys into a lineup if you can. You'd like to have Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper in most of your Philly stacks if you can. But it's not a completely unreasonable pivot at first base. Bryson Stott for 48, 3,000, 21 stolen bases on the season, a 333 on base. That said, even with that, just a 98 WRC plus, 2 points below average for run creation this season. Has better upside than that. We've seen him go on stretches. Last year he went 15-31 with a 283-29, 419 slash line. Still ended at just a 101 WRC plus. But seems like he should have more upside for run creation beyond that kind of a mark, given the numbers that he's capable of in terms of counting stats and the ability to hit for better average, get on base like he does. So any given slate, like the upside, 4,800, 3,000 across sites, not inappropriately priced. I think that's about right. I like the flexibility to both middle infield spots on FanDuel. More often than not, I'm probably dropping him in at second base. Fine on DraftKings at second. Run of outfielders, Nicky Castellanos, who's been much improved over the past handful of weeks. Got himself up to 12 home runs. He's got a 153 ISO, 91 WRC plus. Still has work to do. But he's not completely lost. He costs just $4,200 on DraftKings, $2,800 on FanDuel. He is very easy to afford. Nice economical option in the middle of the Phillies lineup, and there's a lot of upside there. He's been a good hitter for a number of years. Good, reasonable amount of faith in Nicky Castellanos. Marsh with his 50.3% hard hit rate this season, his 11 stolen bases on top of 8 home runs already in 257 plate appearances, a 121 WRC plus. Can absolutely get on board with some cheap Brandon Marsh. Johan Rojas, Garrett Stubbs at the bottom of the lineup. Rojas, good for stolen bases every now and then, but doesn't really get on consistently. Just a 271 on base over 229 plate appearances. Makes him a little bit more difficult to play. And then Garrett Stubbs, just kind of a backup catcher type. At the Mendoza line, over 109 plate appearances, 1 home run, no barrels on the season. Pretty skippable late in the lineup. This one's got to go Phillies bats, Aaron Nola, Dodgers bats, Landon Knack. And Landon Knack is not really on that board. Again, just to put him in perspective. Down here, it's really ugly down here today. Even as value darts, these guys are really pretty weak on matchups, on talent, on experience. It's ugly. Phillies bats are super appealing. Nola's appealing enough, but again, it is a very tough opponent, obviously, in the Dodgers. Cubs and the O's. No lineups for this one yet. Let's see if underdogs got them. Coming up on 3:30, I am trying to keep an eye on the clock. 6:05 start time today. We can't run long. Brendan Nimmo, past 32 games per underdog. 317, 399 on base, 9 home runs, 33 ribbies, 30 runs scored. Top 10 in OPS and F4 during that stretch. Pretty good. No lineups here yet. So Albert Suarez has a 2.48 ERA, but a much more revealing 4.63 xFIP underneath it. That's one glaring wart. He's been good at limiting premium contact, just a 1.46% home run rate, 36.4% hard hits, less than 89 miles an hour of exit velo on average. He's a fly ball trajectory pitcher, but just 5.1% barrels. He's been good at inducing weak and medium contact, missing barrels. He's not a good strikeout pitcher, really. 10.7% swinging strike rate is pretty good, but a 22.5% CSW is awful. He walks a few too many at 8.4%. That's reflected in his whip. It will probably one day burn him in terms of earned runs, and that earned run average will get up back toward where that xFIP is. 18.6% strikeouts is not overly appealing, but it matches up in a way that he could find his way to, if not 1 in 4, a little better than 1 in 5, 22% kind of a strikeout clip if he faced enough Cubs. There are some strikeouts in this Cubs lineup. 23.6% for the projected version, and then same group of hitters, 25.4% last year. For the cheap pricing, and especially at $6,900 on DraftKings, I do think that Albert Suarez is on the board. He's made 11 starts, 65 and a third innings. Most recently, he faced the Athletics on the 5th, went 6 innings, struck out 6, gave up 1 walk, 2 home runs, but just 2 earned runs and on 4 hits. Start before that, if you want a little bit of a differently shaped but effective start, 6 innings, 3 hits, no runs. Only struck out 2, but didn't walk anybody. Went 6, got the quality start, got the win. That was against Texas. Clunky one against Houston, gave up 5 earned, only struck out 3 and walked 3. Only struck out 3 and walked 5 in the start before that. That was against the Yankees in the Bronx. 3 earned runs on 6 hits in that one. 5 and a third of pretty decent baseball. The start before that against the Braves. Handful of shorter outings as he got fully stretched out and went from bulk relief into a regular starting gig. I think he's playable here. I really do. 6,900. He's the only really viable sub $7,000 pitcher today. I do think you've got a playable Brandon Pfaadt at 7,300, but he is the next most clear-cut guy right there at 69. And honestly, as much as I do think that this Cubs lineup is better than the team has been this year, they're gettable. You know, they're not running away with anything by any stretch of the imagination. So I can see Suarez succeeding at least enough to have a decent day at the 69 for an SP2 share. It's a little bit more questionable on FanDuel. He's only completed the 6th, the 2 times that he's done it in the 2 most recent outings. He did get the quality start in both of them. He also booked the win in both of them. But it's a little bit more shaky for FanDuel shares, especially given it's an $8,300 price. If he was in the 7s, call it, take 1,000 off of that, I think it would be a lot more appealing. When I can get Brandon Pfaadt for 200 less, I'm probably more inclined to do that against the Braves. Shane Baz is also in that conversation at 8,000 against the Yankees. Justin Steele on the other side is just a good pitcher. 24% strikeouts with a 5.6% walk this season. Above average rating by Stuff Plus. Good at limiting premium contact, limiting power, 5.4% barrels, 36.8% hard hits with sub 88 miles an hour of exit velo, 2.49% home run rate. Last season, that was similar. 1.96% home runs on a 9.3 degree average launch, 5.4% barrels, matching barrel rates, nearly identical hard hit marks, nearly identical exit velo marks. This is a sustained trait. That was 30 starts in 173 innings last year. Drop another 13 and 79 in a third innings on top. Nearly the same strikeout rate, nearly the same walk rate, slightly higher xFIP, very similar ERA numbers. Swinging strikes are down slightly, but he's also improved his whip as a got you right back. The CSW has actually gone up. He's a talented guy. He's just in a tough spot against the Orioles. Baltimore drawing a 4.50 implied total on the other side. But you could see a little bit of limitation. Even Gunnar is below the magic number for home runs, and that's been difficult to do lately. So there is some suppression of power going on here for Justin Steele reflected in the Orioles lineup. Like I said, when I was running down the Vegas board, I do think it's a spot where it might just run into a Steele didn't work out to be a great DFS option. He gave up a few runs, but was okay over 6 innings. The Orioles didn't work out to be a great DFS option, but they put a few runs on Justin Steele over his 6 innings. That kind of a spot on both sides of it. So it might be one to not fade, certainly across 150 lineups, but maybe if either side of it gets popular, or if you've got a strong lean either way, I think you can lean into or away from shares from this game, however you see it, or at least in that matchup in the Steele versus Orioles side of it. If you're looking at Cubs bats against Suarez, they're pulling a 4+ total? 408, 409. Nico in the top spot is low strikeout, reasonably good on base option, 331 on base, 14 stolen bases. Just a 95 WRC plus, doesn't really jibe with the spot in the leadoff role, the decent on base skills. He's okay as a mix and match piece. He's not at all expensive. 4,000 at second base is fine. 2,800 at both middle infield spots on FanDuel is playable. But he's not super appealing. He's more of like the last man into your stack, even if he's leading off, than the first click if you're stacking Cubs, and you probably shop around for other options positionally first. Michael Busch, especially on FanDuel when you can get Michael Busch at second base as a positional conflict a little bit to Nico. They both have multi-position. You can obviously configure it a bunch of different ways, but that's the ideal spot to put either one of those guys. So that does edge Nico shares out for me a little bit if I'm building a solid handful of Cub stacks. On DraftKings, you don't have that problem. Busch is just a first baseman over there. He's 3,900. He's very cheap. He's got a 201 ISO on the season. He's hit 12 home runs in 312 plate appearances. He's got a solid 12.1% barrel, although that 36.8% hard hit needs a lot of work. Strikes out at a 31.4% clip, but walks at 12.2, so he's on base. He's getting involved. 365 on base percentage is very good. He's created runs 38% better than average. He's a key bat in that lineup. I love the second base eligibility on FanDuel if I'm stacking them. Seiya Suzuki, 4,632 across sites, 12 home runs, 9 stolen bases for him, a 200 ISO, 122 WRC+. You got 14 home runs out of Ian Happ, who's really pulled his season together. 208 ISO, 129 WRC+ from Happ, 354 on base. This whole top core is good at getting on base, pretty good outside of Nico at creating runs and correlating with these other guys, with their teammates. Nobody's even over 4,600 that Seiya's at. A little bit more expensive for these two on FanDuel, but everybody's affordable on the top end for the Cubs. And then they do have support. No Cody Bellinger, by the way. He's, I believe, on the IL. Paul Skeens, no-hitter through 6, 11 strikeouts in Milwaukee. It's a pretty good outing. Nothing like getting called up to the majors and immediately being the best pitcher in the sport, which I don't know if it's entirely true, but it's close, and it's not unfair to suggest. He is amazing. Anyway, no Cody Bellinger, but still some support down lineup for those top 4 hitters. Chris Morel, tons of power out of him. 11.5% barrels, 44.9% hard hits this year. 16 home runs, 7 stolen bases, just a 175 ISO. That obviously needs to go up if he's going to continue being in the lineup, and if he starts doing what he's paid to do, that will go up. 200 average with a 305 on base is pretty rough. Just a 95 WRC plus. We've seen better from Chris Morel, but there is a lot of upside there. 9.0 on the nose to lead the team in the home run model. Pete Crow Armstrong so far has been more of a good outfielder than a good hitter. He's also dead at the Mendoza line. 247 on base is really low. 16 stolen bases in spite of that on-base percentage is pretty good, but he's only been involved at the value of about a half a player as far as run creation goes. Swanson just having a rough year. 8 home runs, 5 steals. Everything about the slash line is really weak this year. A 135 ISO is not characteristic of him. And it doesn't really match the 9% barrels, the 44.5% hard hits that he's generating. Still a good player, still some value there at shortstop, but we're solid halfway through the season, and it really hasn't picked up. So there's some ongoing concerns about Dansby at this point. Mastroboni, Miguel Amaya, if that's who you get in the last 2 spots, they're mix and match options at best. Knack, what do you say? Oh, they switched. They're going with an opener for the Dodgers. I don't have that yet. I don't think. Yeah, looks like Underdog hasn't caught up to that yet. We'll see when they announce it. So it's Anthony Banda. So that just gets a lefty in there to start things out. Anthony Banda has a 21.5% strikeout rate this year, 20.1% for his major league career that began back in 2017. Not a high-end strikeout pitcher. He's in there basically for the first inning to face Kyle Schwarber, who is left-handed, but who is currently slashing 339, 444, 528 with a 189 ISO and a 177 WRC plus, and 7 of his 18 home runs against same-handed pitching this year, over 151 plate appearances. So there's no real threat to Kyle Schwarber just because there's a lefty on the mound, and especially not a low-end middle reliever. And then the other lefty at the top of the lineup that they're bringing him in there for is Bryce Harper, who in his sample this year of 132 plate appearances is slashing 310, 402, 593 with a 283 ISO, a 175 WRC plus, and 7 of his 20 home runs are against same-handed pitching. So I wish him luck. I don't think that really changes anything about the calculus as far as just firing away with Phillies bats. If I drop Banda in here, it would probably lower the home run marks. Initially, I can't imagine his home run stuff is as high as Knack. I can actually... We can see his cosmetic stats. It won't change this by putting him there, but he's yet to give up a homer this year in his 21 2/3 innings of relief work. He's also walked 13%, 21.7% strikeouts, 2.08 ERA, but a 4.73 xFIP. I can bet you that ERA is probably going to go up in his inning today. There's no reason in the world to play Anthony Banda for $4,000 on DraftKings or $5,500 on FanDuel. Even if he was getting a full start, I wouldn't want that. But, yeah, I don't think it really has any dramatic impact on Schwarber or Harper's chances to succeed. Basically the same as they would have been in that first inning, and then it's going to be Landon Knack after that. Where were we? Orioles lineup, yeah? Gunner off the top. Again, just not the greatest matchup for DFS upside against Justin Steele. I think that's somewhat reflected by the 4.50 total. That's a healthy enough total. It is playable, and it's playable on a lot of days where that would be one of our better totals. But we've got some more options to work with, and they're not even the similarly implied teams are not necessarily facing a pitcher who is pretty good at limiting home run upside. So a little bit working against the O's here, but they're a highly playable team against a lot of pitchers on a lot of slates. And as usual, if it is something that impacts their ownership, then there is that, reverse trajectory where they do start getting more interesting. The less appealing good teams get sometimes, the more interesting they get because they're less appealing and the public doesn't go to them as much. So it's always something that has to linger in the back of the mind as you think about these situations with these good teams, these high octane offenses that have 1 through 9 playable type of lineups. The less popular they are, they gain in appeal. It's not always just the super crappy teams, the Colorado Rockies, the Miami Marlins that you got to look for as your contrarian options. When you can get a good team as contrarian, then that is a big, big bonus. That said, I do like to do that against pitchers who are not very good at limiting power and inducing weak contact and all. But Gunner's an option no matter what off the top of the lineup. 6,300, 4,400. You're paying full price for him. He's got 27 home runs and 14 stolen bases, making contact similar, a little bit less than Shohei Ohtani, a little bit less than Aaron Judge, but approaching similar kind of numbers in terms of his premium contact numbers for the season. He's got a 303 ISO, a 173 WRC+. He's been an absolute killer at the top of the lineup. Adley Rutschman, one of the best catchers in baseball, hits second basically every day. 284, 345, 456, creating runs 27% better than average. Very solid 40.9% hard hit rate. Strikes out just 17.3% of the time. Involved in everything that happens with him offensively because he draws walks and gets on base. Tremendous, tremendous option. Fully priced, but worth it. It's another one of those ones where it's just he sets himself apart like Will Smith does. There's so much of a gap between the two of them, the two Contreras brothers, and few other catchers that spring to mind, that it makes sense that those guys are offset price-wise because you gain so much by playing them because they're just good hitters, not good hitters for a catcher, or not. He's not a good hitter, but he's got a lot of power like a Cal Raleigh. Adley Rutschman is just a good hitter. Ryan Mountcastle for 4,300, 3,100 makes a lot of sense to me if I'm stacking up Orioles. That is a very cheap price, especially on DraftKings, for a guy with a 9.8% barrel rate, 48.2% hard hits, 12 home runs and 350 plate appearances. Sure, the output could be higher. The 182 ISO could be higher. But he's created runs 17% better than average, makes fantastic contact, doesn't really strike out that much. 20.9% strikeouts for a guy with power is a totally reasonable strikeout rate. Just 6% walks, so he's hitting the ball very hard and putting it in play all the time from a killer spot in the lineup behind two guys who, if they aren't clearing the bases, are on base constantly ahead of them. You get tons of opportunities for a very cheap price. That price on DK helps you roster those three as a straight line, and it cuts the average down to 5,360, so call it 5,400. 54 may be a little high to pay for Mountcastle at this point. It's right in line with what Adley already costs, but when you factor in that it gives you Gunner for 54 essentially, I don't mind paying that and assigning that, that cost allocation. And I know this is just a game that I play with, where the averaging it doesn't actually mean that, but it sort of does because you're paying for the full stack. You're buying the group, not the individual. Santander for 4,800, 3,400 across sites has 23 home runs, a 260 ISO, 122 WRC+. This is a monster power bat and always has been. Low strikeout rate this year, 18.6%. That's down 5 points over last year. He's walking a little bit less, still mashing the baseball. Honestly, could pick up in hard hits a little bit and go back up even further than he is this year. So room to grow and already hitting for a ton of power. Santander can get into lineups at a fair price. Jordan Westberg for under 5,000 on DraftKings, just 3,100 with 3 position eligibility on FanDuel. He's a player that I don't have to relegate to second base. If I got him at shortstop, I'd be fine with it. Not that I want to skip Gunner for it, but if I had to take him at third base, no issues with that. You've also got Jorge Mateo later in the projected lineup here who fits in at second base and shortstop as well, so it would probably be shortstop, third base, second base if I had to have all 3. Not that I have to make sacrifices in terms of in exchange for getting to Jorge Mateo. He's just a usable part. Jordan Westberg, a lot more than that. Monster contact so far this year, 15 home runs and 6 stolen bases, a 232 ISO. He's created runs 36% better than average. He's having the year that everybody expected Jackson Holliday to have. Austin Hayes for 32.25, a very often a forgotten man in this lineup. He's got a 45.3% hard hit this year. He had 40.1% last year. He's always been a decent middle-of-the-road right-handed bat with upside, with the ability to square the ball up pretty effectively. Last year, 16 home runs in 566 with a pretty solid slash line, a 112 WRC+. Year before, 16 and very much the same thing. I think Casey has a 20 home run year. I think we've actually also looked this up before. Yeah, 22 home runs back in 2021. So it's just the low strikeout nature of Justin Steele. If a lot of other lefties, I'd be advocating for Hayes even a little bit more passionately. Just the idea of don't forget that Austin Hayes is down there. Again, assuming this is the actual lineup that we get. This is the projected version. But I will go to that extent in that if you are stacking Orioles, it's just a less appealing spot to actually stack the team. But if you are doing that, then don't sleep on Austin Hayes. He's got some thunder in that bat. And even if it's not a home run, he's got doubles upside. He's got run creation and run driving in upside. So decent 6-hitter for a very cheap price in this lineup. Mateo's just good for counting stats. 5 home runs, 13 steals on the season. That said, we're already down to 225, 266, 404. It's basically the same story as we've always gotten from Jorge Mateo, which is a couple of good weeks that make him look like really interesting and superstar kind of a talent. He's an excellent defender on top of that, so that helps him stay in lineups. But everything typically craters around the edges, and it has already more than begun. We're well into it at this point. He's a mix and match piece at best if he's in the lineup. Colton Cowser, tons of left-handed power in that bat. That said, we're down to 218, 305, 423. Still a 206 ISO, 12 home runs, 15% barrels, and 49.1% hard hits is tremendous. It's just the reliability, the frequency of contact. And now we're talking about lefty-lefty against a pitcher who doesn't give up a lot of premium contact. So it gets a little thin for Colton Cowser down the bottom. James McCann, just a mix and match catcher at this point. Orioles bats. Justin Steele. Albert Suarez on DraftKings. And then Cubs bats after that, I think. Suarez on FanDuel is just another guy. 8,300. It is a fair price. But again, at 83 here, I think more often than not, I take the additional strikeout upside that Brandon Pfaadt offers. Even if he's in a little bit more potential danger against Atlanta. For 200 less, I think I'll take my chances there. But that is an interesting difference on DraftKings. 6,900 on DK is where I think Suarez is appealing. Already 3 games in, coming up on 4 o'clock. Just 2 hours to lock. Early lock time today if you missed the start of the show or if you haven't been paying attention to your own stuff and your own accounts. Michael Mack says Yankees Wells bomb. I would love to see that. 176 points on the early slate and not even in the money yet, says Michael. Good luck, buddy. Hopefully you get there. Trav, who's good? Travis Wyndham says, yeah, he's good with an exclamation point. I'm just curious who you were talking about. I know that was a few minutes ago. Might have been Steele. King Mana was saying Steele's in his lineups for sure. So to talk about that real quick, what King Mana said a little while back, 337 in the chat there. O's struggling, Steele in my lineup for sure. So, I mean, there's nothing overly predictive about the fact that the Orioles, maybe have run into a little bit of struggles, a little bit of scuffles. It's a lot of happenstance. You know that this is a collection of very good players over time. So a bad week, a bad 2 weeks does not necessarily equal this is now a targetable team all of a sudden. You do have the upside of, as you said in there, Steele is a very good pitcher. And you've got the upside that he is good at taking away a lot of things that they do well, like hitting home runs, hitting for power. So as discussed, I am more than willing to play shares of Steele. I do think he should be involved in a portfolio of lineups and that you should have a nice chunk of them. And if he's under-owned, I think you could go over the public. But I wouldn't say that it's because I'm targeting Orioles. I wouldn't say that it's because the O's have maybe struggled. What's their I haven't even caught that, honestly, that 5-5 over their last 10 games. Still a .620 winning percentage to tie for the American League lead with the Guardians. Goddamn Phillies. .652 winning percentage. So, even with any recent concerns, they are tied for the second best overall winning percentage in baseball, 57-35 for a .620 winning percentage overall, ties them with the Guardians. Those two teams are second only to the Philadelphia Phillies. Everybody else is below 600. I started early so that we would make our lock time, but now I feel like we've got, and it was a 3 o'clock start. It wasn't even crazy early. But now I just feel like we've got all the time in the world for some reason. And so I'm pulling up the Orioles. I want to see What's custom date range? Let's call it. We'll call it since the start of June. Since the start of June, everybody on the Orioles rather, not named Colton Cowser, Connor Norby, Kyle Stowers, Jorge Mateo, and that's it. Anybody who's not one of those four guys is at least 5% above average for creating runs. 105 WRC plus is the low man on that list. That's Ryan Mountcastle, over 141 plate appearances since the start of June. He's got a 105 WRC plus, slashing 248, 298, 426, a 178 ISO, and 6 home runs in that sample. And he's been their lowest end offensive player there. Since the start of June, Anthony Santander has hit 14 home runs. I know we're 11 days into July. I just set it at kind of an arbitrary spot. Gunner's got 9 home runs since the start of June. Westberg's got 7. Adley's got 6. I can cut this a little thinner. Let's go to this is June 15. Less than a month. Since June 15th, everybody not named Colton Cowser, Ryan Mountcastle, and Jorge Mateo has been at least 4 points above average for run creation. The low man on that list, over 57 plate appearances, is 104 WRC plus for Ramon Urias, slashing 240, 333, 360 in that sample. After him, it goes up to the next lowest guy is Ryan O'Hearn in the 9 spot at a 120 WRC plus. 20% better than average creating runs. That's the second worst out of the positive run creators. So that's since June 15th. If you want to call it the start of July, we can look at that. Since the start of July, all right, here's the dip you were referring to. So call it the last 10 days. O'Hearn has been 9 points below average for run creation and that's 24 plate appearances. Santander, over 32 plate appearances, is 13 points below average. Adley is 39 points below average over 31 plate appearances since the beginning of July. Ced Mullins is 78% below average creating runs over 24 plate appearances since the start of July. Colton Cowser, Jorge Mateo continue to be negative. But in that same stretch, you get Ramon Urias at 223, James McCann at 210. That's over 17 plate appearances and 11 plate appearances. The guy was just talking about, Austin Hayes, is at a 164 over 17 opportunities. To get to guys with realistic samples, Gunnar and Jordan Westberg, 35 and 33 plate appearances each. That's not a realistic sample size, but it's more complete because they play every day. 138 WRC plus for Gunnar and a 135 for Westberg. But yeah, that's the dip that you're talking about. But hopefully that added some context, added some perspective. Going back, if you stretch it 2 more weeks beyond the most recent 2 weeks, they were all fantastic. If you add 2 weeks more on top of that, they're all, the best team in baseball or one of them. So targeting it just because of a 10-day slide where we're talking about literally, 35 plate appearances maximum means nothing, right? It's the same reason we don't believe in BABIP or that we talk about not being able to quantify what BABIP might mean. Because we don't have enough opportunities. We don't have a 35 plate appearance sample is meaningless in baseball. So again, you're just looking at Steele because Steele's a good pitcher and could succeed, but not necessarily because of the slide that the Orioles went through. Yeah, KC, we're going to get there. We'll get there in depth, no doubt about it. We just got to make our way through the rest of the slate first, but might take a sec. You want to skip ahead real quick? What is that? Is this one? Jack Janowitz has never played in Major League Baseball. As you said, it's his Major League debut. He does have a good opportunity to succeed against the Seattle Mariners, but looking at the minor league numbers, over 16 starts in the minors this year in Double-A. He has a 20.1% strikeout rate. He's got a 4.55 ERA with a 3.30 xFIP, which is, that's a reasonably good it's good xFIP. The 4.55 ERA isn't overly appealing, but there's appeal in that gap between those numbers. It means he's better than he looks on the surface. But that's still less than ideal as a 23-year-old pitching in Double-A and then a guy who's never pitched above Double-A and immediately getting called up to the show like that is a little bit concerning. Typically, you see that out of more aggressively talented pitchers with 30+% strikeout rate type of numbers. Last year in 16 starts, also in Double-A, 70 and a third innings, had a 17.7% strikeout rate, 7.1% walks, a 6.53 ERA with a 4.86 xFIP. I really don't see a lot of lanes for Jack Kachanowicz to succeed. He did, let's see, looking at the game log, 2 complete games recently is encouraging. 5-hitter, 1 run allowed against the White Sox affiliate in his most recent outing on the 6th. And then 2 starts before that at Cincinnati's Double-A affiliate, 9 innings of 1 earned run, 2 run, 5-hit ball. Struck out 4 in that one, struck out 7 in the one against the White Sox. Does have a few decent strikeout totals, even with, for the low strikeout rate overall. He did pile up some decent totals, a couple 7 strikeout games in here, an 8 strikeout game. By traditional scouting, because that's what we've got to work with right now, we're looking at a 35 grade fastball with a 55 grade potential slider, 50 current, 55 future. Mediocre stuff, medium grade command, 50 grade command potential. He was their 13th ranked prospect via Fangraphs coming into this season. There's not a lot to really cling to outside of the fact that he costs $4,000 and is facing the Mariners. You give me 5 innings against the Mariners, I'll take a couple lumps from runs as long as you provide a few strikeouts. Given the fact that he found 7 or 8 in a couple of minor league spots, maybe you've got that upside. But to me, right now, it doesn't look like this is a fully shaped major league pitcher yet. So I'm really skeptical. But again, a cheap hitter price on DraftKings does make a lot of difference. He doesn't have to do all that much to succeed for you in that price. So if you're inclined to, make those kind of punt plays, if that's your thing, you see a $4,000 pitcher, and you're just like, oh, let me check that guy out. I want to get that into my lineup. Then he's not off the board. Anytime you get a guy making at least a full, traditional start, or so they hope, I think you can go there. And you're just, any risk, any danger, any downside is already baked into your price, and more so when it's only $4,000. So that's kind of the lens through which I would view it with that guy. It's not that he's necessarily appealing. Skeens through 7, no hitter still going. They need to take him out. Pull him out of the game. I don't care. Through 7. That is the worst thing that could happen, honestly, is letting him throw 2 more innings, chasing a no-hitter. The Pirates need to be smart. They need to protect their investment, protect their future, and take him the hell out of that game ASAP. No-hitters don't matter. I know that they're fun. I know that records are nice. A win based off of a no-hitter is exactly the same value as a win in which your pitcher gave up 15 runs and your team scored 16. Is what it is. I didn't design the game. Not my fault. If no-hitters were somehow worth 2 wins, I would be advocating to leave them in. But you don't run the risk of taxing an arm with high stress pitches, making him do something he's never done before just to chase individual glory. It doesn't make sense. Pull him out of the game. This has been your I think I know better than most major league managers disclaimer for the show. Now back to our regularly scheduled broadcast. Nestor Cortez on the mound for the Yankees. Again, Nestor, he's fine. He's typically, to me, one of these guys who falls more often than not into, Nestor's a decent real-life pitcher who is not the most appealing DFS pitcher. But I think the way that he fits in price-wise on DraftKings at $8,300, he does have a little bit of appeal. He projects out just fine on this slate. It's a good matchup against a very gettable Rays team. They've got a 25.3% strikeout rate for this confirmed version of the lineup for him to work with. He's at 23.8 himself. He only walks 4.5% of hitters. He's not bad. 3.41 ERA, a 3.88 xFIP, 10.7% swinging strike, just a 26% CSW. He's given up a ton of premium contact and power this year. That's where you run into some concerns. couple mistakes can ruin Nestor's day real quick, because usually you're dealing with like, a 5 strikeout kind of a total. So that can, 1 home run takes 3 or 4 of those strikeouts away on you. It becomes problematic. He has thrown 111 innings in his 19 starts. But I think the concern from me is a little bit around the nearly 8% barrels. He's always been a fly ball pitcher. 22-degree average launch is a significant fly ball trajectory. That alone doesn't matter. But when you combine that with 44.8% hard hit rate, 90-plus miles an hour of exit velo, halfway to 91, and some barrels mixed in there, it does add up to some home runs. 3.37 is non-tragic, but it's higher than you'd want it. I have to scroll back up in my notes to Nestor here. Last time out, he went 6. He did strike out 8 in that one. That was against the Red Sox. Pretty good start there. Gave up a solo home run, walked 1, but that was the only run he allowed on 3 hits over 6. Got the quality start. Did not get the win, but again, not his fault. Also took a loss against the Blue Jays the start before that. Took a loss against the Braves the start before that. He was all right against the Braves. Went 7. Struck out 7. 3 earned runs on 5 hits, including a home run, but that's a quality start. It's a reasonably good DFS day. The game against the Blue Jays, he only went 4 1/3, gave up 3 earned runs on 7 hits, struck out 5, walked 1, gave up a homer. I forget why he was out so early. He faced 20 hitters. Uncharacteristically short start. I forget whether that was just trouble. I think I watched that game too, which pissing me off that I can't remember. But yeah, might have just gotten in trouble in the 5th there. And Boone being Boone probably yanked him. Good start against the Orioles, 4-back. Struck out 6, walked 0, no runs on 5 hits over 6 innings. Quality start, the one before that at Kansas City. So, I mean, he's got 7-inning quality start, get you to your bonus numbers upside. 5 to 8 strikeouts is typically on the board. He's certainly good enough to. He's most definitely good enough to play. I can confirm that he is good enough to play. 8,300 is a good price for Nestor on DraftKings. He's playable at 9,200 on FanDuel. Not my first choice off the pitching slate, but ranking in at number 3, slightly ahead of Aaron Nola against the Dodgers. Way better matchup for him. Comparable matchup to the top 2 pitchers on the board, though I would say these 2 are stronger matchups because those are better teams. Tampa Bay is a collection of better hitters than those 2 teams are, in my opinion. Shane Baz for just 7,200. A little bit appealing on DraftKings. Certainly at damn it, did it again. Slid another one in there real quick. Right on the back of the first one. Baz is appealing at 8,000 on FanDuel as well. 6 innings in his debut start the other day at Texas. I was expecting more like 5. Ended up having a pretty decent day. Struck out 6. Gave up 3 earned runs on 7 hits. Walked just 1. But the fact that he got through 25 hitters, went 6 innings, and came away with 6 strikeouts is appealing. Puts him on the radar as a pitcher who is now back to kind of full strength. In his AAA stint this year, had a 24.7% strikeout rate with a 12.9% walk rate over, call it 10 outings. Limited innings in some of those. He was going like 3 innings to stretch the arm back out, and then started going 4, and then worked his way up to like 6. Facing 23 hitters in over 5 in his last rehab start on the 26th before he got promoted back up. Had a 25.6% strikeout rate in 27 major league innings back in 2022 over 6 starts. In 2021, he made 3 starts and threw 13 1/3 innings and had a monster 30-plus 36.7% strikeout rate. Obviously, that doesn't amount to all that many strikeouts because there's not all that many innings, but is a talented guy. There is definitely an arm here. 8.7% swinging strikes in that first one. Again, that's just 1 start over 6 innings. This could definitely go up. That could go up. He's got good stuff. This is a short rating, small sample rating, but he does have good stuff. It's not the easiest opponent in the world, but I'll tell you what, it's not the most difficult either. This version of the Yankees lineup is much more gettable than what we started this season with. Alex Verdugo in the top spot in the projected Yankees lineup. Let's see, we got the confirmed in. Verdugo's in the top spot in the confirmed lineup as well. Verdugo, Soto, Judge, Ben Rice, the new favorite player. Not really, but damn, kid's good. Who knew? Verdugo in the top spot, 3,700, 2,900 Yanks, just trying to get anybody going as a contributor in that spot. Rice moving into the cleanup role is really interesting. His power's obviously been on display over his 73 plate appearances. They were leading him off recently. That's why I mentioned him, because he's good at getting on base, has a good eye at the plate. He's drawn an 11% walk rate in the small sample so far, but seems like they want to have his power and get that lefty bat in behind Aaron Judge here, which I do think makes some sense. I don't know that he's necessarily, out of the leadoff hitter mold anyway. So I'm fine with that change up. And Verdugo fits the mold of a leadoff hitter. He's a guy who typically is low strikeout, low walk rate, put the ball in play type. He has not been doing that over the last month and a half or so, but he was doing that pretty frequently to start the season. So hopefully the move to the leadoff spot gets him going up there. He is very cheap as a correlated scoring option, directly leading into Soto and Judge, who are at 17.05 and 19.87. We are just short of doubling up the magic number today for Aaron Judge. Part of the reason for that is in the small sample of innings that we had at the major league level going back over time, Bass gave up a chunk of home runs in those few outings that he made. So that's kind of cooked into the model here. You could go in and artificially lower it to hamstring that number if you really were desperate to cut the number down, but I don't think it's an unrealistic expectation for upside. And if you look in, let's see, some of the minor league seasons at a 1.17 home run per nine back in 21 in AAA, was pretty good at managing home runs in AAA this year in the small sample, 0.46 home run per nine. That amounted to 2 home runs in the 39 and a third innings. But again, we're not exactly pitching a ton of innings there. He gave up 5 homers in 27 innings in the show in 2022 when he was up, and then another 3 in the 13 and a third in the 2021 sample. Again, some of that is a little bit difficult to manage. It's a little bit unfair maybe against, but this is a pitcher who is still very much that guy because he just hasn't seen a ton of action since then. So I think, at least for these two hitters, I'm willing to leave it where it is. Ben Rice for 3,800, 3,100. The pricing has not met the quality yet. 21.9% strikeouts has gone up a little bit, but that's still a very manageable strikeout rate. If you can keep it in that kind of a range, we're fine, especially against an 11% walk rate. He's mashed the ball when he's made contact, 18.4% barrels, has a sweet short little swing. Really like the looks of the swing. It's been working out so far, 5 home runs, a 281 ISO, 140 WRC+. I'm not calling for him to replace Anthony Rizzo full-time or anything like that some people are, but I'm at least intrigued by the hitter in a go-forward sense. Took him in the Dynasty draft. Glaber at 35.26, 8 home runs, 4 steals, sub 300 on base, 85 WRC+. Has been benched a few times, has been banged up, has been making excuses. It's been an ugly year for Glaber, who was really enthusiastic about coming into this year off of that year that he had last year. The Pirates watch this show. Clearly, we are on right now. Hello, Pittsburgh. We're on live right now in the Pittsburgh dugout or the clubhouse or something because the Skeens no got broken up, but he wasn't on the mound when it happened. Jake Bauers leadoff single in the 8th off of Colin Holderman, so they did bring in a reliever in the 8th. Good decision, Pittsburgh. I applaud your management. Well done. Austin Wells, I do like the catcher bat. Somebody mentioned him in the chat for a little bit of home run upside. He's got a 4.80 in the model. It's not the highest mark in the world, but it's not completely dead either. 6.6% barrels this year, 36.1% hard hits. What intrigues me about Wells is the short sample numbers that he put up in terms of premium contact last year. 13.8% barrels, 41.4% hard hits, and that came against an 18.7 and a 4% strikeout and walk rate. So he was really compelling. That's over 75 plate appearances. It wasn't a huge sample at all. He hit 4 home runs in that stretch. So just the combination of the low strikeout, low walk, and very good premium contact that we were seeing made him an appealing lefty. This season he's striking out at a similarly low clip, but he's tripled that walk rate. So he's doing different things a little bit. We're not talking about the same frequency of contact, but he still does make pretty quality contact. He's got 4 home runs in the 183 plate appearances. It's a lefty bat to throw at Shane Baz and mix things up a little bit. I don't mind him as a cheap catcher play. I definitely think he's one of the stackable Yankees from the top of the lineup. Anthony Volpe at 4,200 has just been completely lost over the last 2 months. See how quickly we can do this. Can I just drag these? No. Got to actually click them individually. Oh, all right. No, I can just skip down. Cool. Since May 28th, 179 plate appearances. Anthony Volpe has no home runs, a 3.4% walk rate against a 21.8% strikeout rate, a .087 ISO. He's been 51% worse than average creating runs, and he's slashing 208, 235, 295. That is not a good player. You could have put Oswaldo Cabrera, and you guys know that I don't think Oswaldo Cabrera is a good hitter. You could have put him into that spot and gotten, at worst, equivalent production. Anthony Volpe's been bad. Started out the season really well. Really looked like a hitter who had found his way to making improvements. But it has been bad. He's scored 60 runs because he's been hitting ahead of these guys, even with the low end on base. He's been involved, and it's helped him to get to at least that. But everything about what he does as an individual this year has been off. He's very cheap. You can build him into lineups. He does have, if he gets things right, he does have ability. There are peaks in there with the valleys. But it's been really long since he's provided any kind of frequent quality. Trent Grisham every now and then gets a hold of one. He's got 5 home runs in 122 plate appearances, a 186 ISO, mix and match piece at best, and really a pretty flawed hitter overall, but does have a 10.4% barrel and a decent walk rate. He's playable in the outfield, but you don't usually want to get to a third outfielder from the Yankees, let alone a fourth. Like, I don't think I want to go Verdugo, Soto, Judge, and then use Trent Grisham in the util spot on FanDuel. That'd be a really weird way to build with this Yankees team. On DraftKings, obviously, you can't play all 4 of those guys together. And then Ozzy at the bottom of the lineup, 28-24, mix and match piece, does have 5 position eligibility on FanDuel. I believe the only guy in DFS with 5 position eligibility. Willing to be wrong, but he's the only one I think I've spotted so far. So the flexibility's nice, but the player's not all that good. On the Rays side, you get Johnny Diaz off the top, having a really rough season compared to the last 2 seasons. Even with the dramatic decline in average and on base and his power output and all the things that he was doing really well over the last 2 years, still is creating runs 9% better than average and holding down that leadoff spot at least a little bit. But, I mean, we're talking about a player who last year had a 330, 410, 522 slash line with a 164 WRC+. Now we're down to 269, 328, 387 with a 109. So that is a dramatic decline. He still hits the ball really hard, 49.4% hard hits. It's down about 4 or 5 points, 4.5 points from last year. But what he's really lost is the barrels from last year. Still low strikeout, medium walk rate. He was higher walks last year. That's where some of the on-base went. Between the evaporation of some hits, some barrels, and some walks, that's what accounts for the dip in on-base, which also adds up to the dip in run creation overall. Still a very strong player, 4,100, 2,800. I think he's playable off the top if you're targeting Nestor. And Nestor's a gettable pitcher. Again, you can just focus on the premium contact and say that guys like Jondi, who know how to exploit premium contact, are appealing in that spot. There's also a righty bat going up against the lefty. You get Randy Arozarena, another righty with a lot of premium contact and a lot of power. Even in a down season, those are good contact numbers. It's got 11 home runs and 12 stolen bases, 1 point below average for run creation. The 158 ISO is appalling for a player of his skill. 203, 311, 360. He should be way better than he's been. He should be a lot more like, let's say the guy from last year who went 23-22 with a 254, 364, 425, and 26 points better than average. Or the guy from the year before, 20 and 32 stolen bases, 263, 327, 445. Very good player, underpriced in a down season, but any struggles this year and any concerns about this spot against Nestor Cortes are more than accounted for by the pricing on both sites. The Rays are very, very cheap. Brandon Lau has a ton of skills, 4,300, 3,000. 8 home runs on the season and just 169 plate appearances, a 233 ISO. Barreling the ball 14.6% of the time against a 42.7% hard hit rate. A lot of the time, overtime, we didn't get Lau against lefties. This year, though, we're looking at 28 plate appearances. This is a very small sample, but he's got 2 of his home runs against lefties so far. Slashing 333, 357, 630 with a 296 ISO. For the career, we're at just 226, 288, 448 with a 222 ISO. So the power is always still there against lefties. We just take a bit of a dip in terms of the quality, the frequency. We get a much higher strikeout rate, lefty-lefty. So there are flaws with Brandon Lau in this situation. He could definitely be a strikeout target for Nestor. But what he does well and what we're looking for from him doesn't really change in the split against lefties. So I think he's equally playable as he would be on any given slate. Great spot in the lineup. Isaac Paredes for 44, 3,300. First and third base on both sites. Tons of power output, 15 home runs, a 202 ISO, creating runs 40% better than average from the right side. Player who hit 31 home runs last year with a 238 ISO and a 137 WRC plus on extremely similar kind of contact. This is not high-end contact, but he makes it work. Paredes, let's see. Yeah, where we get concerning about some guys like this, and it's the same for like Josh Smith from Texas, is the current year output against some of the expected numbers. And if you pull up StatCast, you can see some of that. Like his xWOBA is a 37th percentile xWOBA at 311. Expected batting average just 224. His xSlug is 372 versus the actual, which is at 467. And part of that is the lack of quality on display here. But again, we're talking about multiple seasons at this point. We're talking about 1,000 plate appearances in which he's made it work. So every now and then you do get guys that thread their way through some of those X numbers and just continue to deliver, regardless of why that might be. He doesn't swing and miss. He's got a very 87th percentile whiff rate, 78th percentile strikeout rate. He's just a good player. 16.8% strikeouts, 11.4% walks. Medros Audio, 3,300, 2,600, plays 4 positions on FanDuel, 2 on DraftKings. Slashing 302, 324, 409. Just a 108 ISO, 2 home runs, 7 stolen bases. He's okay for correlated scoring. It's probably not the ideal spot in the lineup, having him hit 5th. He's more late lineup, early lineup. Get him ahead of the run driver inner type guys. The not run creators, the RBI machines, the power bats. He doesn't really have a ton of pop in that bat. But he's a good hitter. Definitely playable, flexy kind of a player for a cheap price. Jose Siri for 35-27 has 11 home runs and 8 steals. Mediocre in terms of the triples, bad in terms of the slash line. Just a 183 ISO, 93 WRC plus. But any given slate, counting stat upside for sure for a very good price in the outfield. Overall, it's probably just another outfielder or even a lower end than average outfielder. But if you catch that big day, and he's more than capable of that big day against a pitcher like Nestor, he's probably not going to be the most popular among the Rays, and the Rays aren't going to be the most popular among your stacks. Jose Caballero, Johnny DeLuca, Alex Jackson to round things out. Jackson has the idea of power, but never really delivers. He's got 1 home run an atrocious slash line, and negative 24 WRC plus over 87 plate appearances. That's why he costs the dead min at catcher. He's just a mix and match part at best. Over 160, Johnny DeLuca has been kind of a lost cause. 3 home runs, 7 steals, but a 63 WRC plus. Really weak slash line. And Caballero, 6 homers, kind of unexpectedly. 24 stolen bases are great against just a 301 on base, but he's not really reliable. We deal with a high strikeout rate, lack of premium contact, not an inability to get on, but that's a very bad on base percentage for a guy who's paid to get on base and steal bases. Could be more valuable than he is, but it's not a great DFS option late lineup. So, like, you know, there's a reasonable cut line for shares from 6 up, but I think those top 6 are at least, you know, on the board to be an appealing stack to get value from, the mix and match with, to pair with your high-end, you know, Red Sox or whoever type stack. This probably goes, I guess I have to put Nestor on top, given that he ranks out 3rd on the board overall. So call it Nestor up top. I'll give the 2nd spot to Baz. Or maybe it's like Nestor, Judge, and Soto as a 2-man, then Shane Baz, then the rest of the Yankees, and then the Rays. Although it's actually probably the Rays, then the rest of the Yankees. There's a bad Yankees lineup outside of Soto and Judge, and maybe Benji Rice. Everybody else in that lineup is shaky. I'll pop back into chat, see what you guys are on about. 426. We're definitely not getting out of here by 5. I was lying about that. Trey says, Terry, you know, it's crazy as bad as the Yanks have been lately. The Dodgers are only like a half a game ahead of them, and no one mentions them as much. They were talking about this on MLB Network. Yeah, the Dodgers have been, you know, a little bit lower end. They've got, you know, some very specific reasons that you could point to with, you know, Nomuki off the top of the lineup for one thing. Some bumps in the pitching staff. The Yanks have taken some lumps as well, but you're just, even compared to the Dodgers, you're just always going to hear more about the Yankees. You're going to hear more about New York teams, by and large, than any other team, just because of the way that the media works and the size of the market. But yeah, the fact that you don't hear as much about the Dodgers, more competitive division, probably, I would say the AL East. I know the Dodgers have some chasers, but the Yanks have a couple biggies with the Orioles out in front of them and the Red Sox nipping at their heels. So, yeah, but definitely an interesting point. Trey saying baseball's gone soft. I disagree. You've got to, that is quite literally a generational pitcher. You don't want that kid, the way that arms work, especially with the flatness of his delivery coming in. Got to protect that elbow as long as they can. Yeah, Monty nails it. Dodgers don't have to deal with Baltimore. Some good teams out west, though. A's and the Red Sox. Again, this one has a pretty premium hitting environment, wind blowing out in Fenway again, and the meaty total up at 10 runs, the highest run total on the board by a full run over that first game, the Dodgers and Phillies game, run and a half over most of the rest of the board. So very appealing for bats on both sides in this one, primarily for the Red Sox going up against Luis Medina. I don't really think you want to go to Medina here. He does have good stuff, as rated at 4 points above average by Stuff Plus. He has been somewhat effective at limiting home runs, but this feels like a little bit of luck in a small sample of 7 starts and 35 innings, given the premium contact that he allows on a very significant fly ball trajectory. I just think this is a spot where the Red Sox are going to get to some Luis Medina here. You can see that his lack of having given up home runs in a result sense has a limiting effect on these Red Sox bats in terms of the home run upside. Both of these guys could easily be above the magic number if we were just factoring in the quality of contact that he's allowed. He only strikes out 15.9% this year while walking 11.5%. That's wildly unsustainable. 4.37 ERA is fine, but a 5.45 xFIP is not. A 1.54 whip is terrible. Last year in 109 2/3, he struck out 21.4, walked 11.5, 5.42 ERA with a 4.78 xFIP. Gave up, similarly significant contact. The launch angle was a little bit lower. The barrels were just exactly the same at 6.2%. So he manages to get through despite all the premium contact, all the hard hits, and the exit velo. I do think he's targetable for Red Sox. Again, I think they're going to be crazy popular as well, like we've seen over the last few days. No reason in the world to expect that people won't just be running right back to that 6 total. I don't think you go there for 6,000 on DraftKings. You definitely don't go there for 6,900 on FanDuel. This is where it would be doable if you were going to do it, but it's really, really paper thin. And I think you just got better places to go. Second, down toward the bottom of the board there. I could take the orange off of these guys. That was from yesterday. I'd just rather go to one of these, better looking spots. Again, not many of the $6,000 pitchers are really all that appealing today. Tanner Houck, on the other hand, 9,500, 10-2, projects out as the top overall pitcher on the board. That's despite the hitting conditions because 26.4% strikeouts helps him out for the opposing team a lot. He's working at a 23.3 strikeout rate this season, 2.68 ERA with a 3.11 xFIP. All those numbers are sparkling. So is the 5.1% walk rate. 10+% swinging strikes with a very solid 30.5% CSW. It's been good at limiting barrels, limiting launch angle. There's a 4.3 degrees on average. Means I don't care as much about the hard hits, the exit velo. He's been excellent at keeping the ball in the yard, just a 1.10% home run rate. That's reflected back over time. Lost a few here in terms of the home runs allowed, but you can see the quality in terms of the barrels. The 6.5 degree average launch is all intact going back over longer samples last two seasons. 1.21% home runs. It was all working that year. Again, 60 innings in 4 starts. It's not a huge sample, but at least it demonstrates that that's a sustainable trait and something that he does rather than just something he happened his way into over these 111 innings. Even if he's popular, I think you can fire away to your heart's content with Tanner Houck. No reason to believe that he wouldn't succeed here. You can see the impact he has on these A's home run numbers. And really, if you take the home run ball away from them, it is a more limited version of this baseball team. They're not a good team, not a good lineup when they do have those home runs. But if you're by and large going to take the home runs away, it's really damaging to them. We do have the A's lineup, though. Let me grab it. J.J. Bleday, Miguel Andujar, Brent Rooker, Lawrence Butler hitting cleanup today. That's a twist. No Soderstrom. I really would have liked to have had Soderstrom in this lineup to talk about. Seth Brown back, though. So the A's are less appealing, I think, than they've been the last 2 days when we've talked about them a little bit in Fenway as like the contrarian angle into that Fenway hitting conditions and, compared them a lot to like when the Rockies are at home and everybody goes to the away team and leaves the Rockies on the board even though they're at a 5+ kind of a total. It's not quite that scenario given Houck's ability to keep the ball down, limit run scoring against to a pretty strong degree. Even in good hitting environment, you can see Brent Rooker at just 5.91 in the home run model. No Shea Langoliers in terms of home run hitting upside. So you lose him, you get Kyle McCann, catcher instead. That's a big downgrade. Yeah, I don't see a lot of appeal here. I think it's more one-sided on the Red Sox for both things. But if you are inclined to go to the A's, it will be very low-owned. It will be a cheap contrarian approach into the slate. It's just you're dealing with an even more limited version of this lineup. Bleday off the top for 37.29 across sites, has a 185 ISO. He's created runs 9% better than average with 11 home runs this year. He's having a strong season. He's good at getting on base. He's low strikeout, high walk. He's an efficient lefty hitter for a very cheap price in a good lineup spot. Miguel Andujar for 38.28, 296 average, 324 on base, 401 slug with a 109 WRC plus. He's been a good hitter for them. Hasn't really driven the ball all that effectively this season, but does have 3 home runs in the limited sample of plate appearances, 14.7% strikeouts and 4.1% walks. If he was making any kind of quality contact, even the contact that he made last year in a small sample against that kind of frequency of contact, and that's sustained year before, he would be a better player. You would see a higher ISO. You would see better numbers overall. But hasn't been. Brent Rooker for 5,000, 3,600. Highly, highly playable. Their most appealing bat on any given slate. But again, Houck is very good at checking power. So that keeps Brent Rooker just a little above halfway to the magic number. Lawrence Butler, 25 across sites, 5 home runs, 6 steals, but really limited output across 179 plate appearances. Not a lot to love in the results there. Does make very good contact, 10.3% barrels and 47.7% hard hits. That's appealing, But everything about what's actually happened so far is not. And that kind of goes back over time. Let's see what the X numbers look like. Or not. StatCast loaded the page, but not the results. Weird. Where are we? 24. Yeah, his X slug is 427 against that 342. Room to grow as a hitter for sure. This is very strong contact. That's a very high strikeout rate, but he draws some walks. Should be a better on base, should be a better hitter. Maybe we get there, maybe we don't, but doesn't look all that appealing today outside of a cheap price in a good spot in this lineup if you happen to be going there. Zach Geloff is a good player. 10 home runs, 11 steals. He's kind of rounding into form slowly but surely. Had a good season last year. We looked at it yesterday. The triple slash most likely continues to improve until it normalizes. The counting stats are already there. He's an easy option at second base if you're building A stacks. 3,400, 2,900 absolutely should be included in your plans. Doesn't make for like a good one-off or anything like that, and there's no reason that like, oh, I need to get my Geloff shares, so let me make sure that I build some A stacks. More of a, if you're already planning on playing the A's, include Zach Geloff. Seth Brown for 27-22 is having a weak year, over 195 plate appearances, just a 117 ISO, a 63 WRC plus, 5 homers, 4 steals. Sub Mendoza, 251 on base. Has been a better player than that over time. Last year wasn't really, just 14 home runs, a 92 WRC plus was better, but not by much. Year before, 25 homers, 11 steals, a 214 ISO, a 116 WRC plus. Significantly better. Look how many of these guys weren't even in baseball 2 years ago. Kyle McCann, Brett Harrison, Max Schumann going down the lineup there. McCann's been effective enough as a backup catcher, 287, 386, 460 slash line with a 145 WRC plus and 4 home runs and 101 plate appearances, 16.4% barrels. Maybe gets a little bit sneaky to connect with one, drive the ball, hit a double, and drive in Zach Geloff for their one run that they score against Tanner Houck. That's not going to win you a slate. It is unlikely that Kyle McCann breaks your slate with 2 home runs against Tanner Houck today. Brett Harris, same thing. Max Schumann, same thing. Both those guys, pretty low-end results so far. Schumann, mix and match part, 5 home runs and 9 steals, 2% above average for run creation. Getting on base a little bit, so maybe a somewhat realistic wraparound play from the bottom of a bad lineup in a bad spot. On the Red Sox side, they're the go-to team here. Jarren Duran, David Hamilton, 2 killer lefties off the top of the lineup. Duran, 10 home runs, 22 steals, a 122 WRC plus, just doing everything right on the baseball diamond. 45.2% hard hits with an 8.8% barrel. You can see the high price is $5,900, $3,800, but he is totally deserving of it. He's a great correlated scoring option with a lot of individual upside. Easy enough way outside of the price to get your stack started. If you want a cheaper option, David Hamilton's right there for just $47.31. Different positioning, but doesn't really matter. 5 home runs, 23 steals out of him in just 198 plate appearances. Reasonably high strikeout, but fairly low walk, so some of that equals some contact. Just a 4.5% barrel, 33.8% hard hit, 147 ISO, and just a 98 WRC plus. But he's been an interesting DFS contributor when he gets involved, and he's got an absolutely killer spot in the lineup, hitting ahead of Tyler O'Neill and Rafi Devers, right behind Jarren Duran. So, I mean, it's easy click. And he's less expensive, so it helps bring those prices down a little bit for you. Honestly, O'Neill is too cheap on DraftKings. Again, it's another one of those ones where I'm calling it cheap relative to the talent, relative to the cap, but $5,300 on its own is a fairly high price. But I think he's a little better than that. I wouldn't have balked at a $5,500 price for him. He's got 16 home runs at 252 ISO, creating runs 35% better than average, 15.2% barrels, 47.7% hard hits. Doing a lot of Tyler O'Neill things. He's stolen 3 bases? I thought he had a couple more than that. Stolen 3 bases. He did have a good year for steals a few years back. Where is it? Was it further back? Yeah, it must be 1 year further back. Things you don't need to do on a show when you have a hard deadline an hour and change away. 34 home runs and 15 stolen bases. I knew there was a good stolen base total in there in 2021. O'Neill, even with the quality season this year in a big market park and a big market team with a lot of focus on him, I still feel like he's somehow an underrated player. I don't really know how to explain why that is or what causes me to think it, but I do feel like he's a little bit underrated, underappreciated, and sometimes goes a little underowned by the DFS public. So if that's the case today, fire away. I don't expect it to be the case. This entire team should be really highly owned. 62.43 for Rafi Devers. Absolutely fine with paying those prices. 21 home runs, 14.4% barrels, and 52.7% hard hits. Looking exactly like Rafi Devers over time. Up to a 294 ISO, 156 WRC plus, a tremendous option at third base. Connor Wong still costs just $4,000 on DraftKings despite slashing 309, 368, 436 over 261 opportunities this year. He's just a good hitting catcher. Has seen very, very good results so far this season. In seasons past, he's a guy we've looked at quite a bit for just his bat on ball potential, and he's added the ability to be a little bit more consistent this year. He is, whether or not people know, I believe the last remaining part of the Mookie Betts trade. There's something to be said about that. He's another player where if you look at the X numbers, they definitely, he's overperforming them. But he's been consistent at doing it. He plays a value position. And when you're talking about a player like this, who we've seen delivered okay numbers in the past. He hit 9 home runs. He stole 8 bases in 403 plate appearances last year. 151 ISO, 77 WRC plus is nothing to write home about, but a growing young player at a key position like catcher. I don't really mind that he's overperforming X numbers across the board in a lot of ways because they haven't done anything to the price. If he was coming in here and they were asking for 55 for him because he's slashing 309, 368 on the front end, I would be talking about how, wow, that's an uncomfortably high price, despite the fact that his results have been good this year. Since the price hasn't gone up, I'm good with just, looking at what the results have been and currently are a little bit more than I otherwise might. I would hesitate a little bit more to do that. And I would talk about what, the truth of the matter is. And it might fall somewhere in between when it comes out in the wash after another, 250 plate appearances at the end of the year. He most likely is not a 300 hitter. He's probably more like a 330 on base guy. But I could argue for more power than we've seen. So DFS-wise, easy to play. Yoshida for 37.28. Another guy who's just kind of underperforming what we saw from him last year. I think it's just a matter of finding his footing. Made a chunk of plate appearances. Got hurt, missed a big chunk of time, back for another chunk of plate appearances. But those two things don't really add up together, right? You can't just say one with a big long break in between and expect good results from those two from either side of it. I think after another 100 plate appearances, we see some pretty strong normalization for Yoshida. Easy to play at 37.28 in the outfield. Willie Abreu, 43.29, hit his 7th home run the other day after we talked about not leaving him out of your stacks. I'm going to say it again. Don't leave Willie Abreu out of Boston stacks as you build him. Hopefully he's a forgotten man again. 7 stolen bases to boot, a 199 ISO, 113 WRC plus, 11% barrels and 46.6% hard hits. He's been terrific for them from the left side. Very interesting player for 43.29 in the outfield. Dominic Smith, I said specifically I wasn't overly interested in playing him the other day, and he also hit a home run in that one. So I'm going to call out, I always call out the good ones and the bad ones when I remember them, and that was definitely one that I was not on. I still am not a believer in the hitter in any way, really. But every now and then he can get a hold of one, and he is a lefty bat going up against a really weak righty with the wind blowing out. It's blowing out the other way, but he can drive one that way, bang one off the monster or something if nothing else. So he's in play, 3,100, 2,700. He's not my ideal first baseman. I'll give it that much. 42.31 for Ceddanne Rafael at the bottom of the lineup. 11 homers, 11 steals, tons of runs scored and runs driven in. Kid's been good. He's been sneakily good, sneakily overperforming the slash line in the 9 spot, beating the odds of what you would normally see from some of those numbers from a 9 hitter. He's been interesting despite a 277 on base. Just a 177 ISO, despite being 12 points below average for run creation. That WRC plus doesn't really feel like it jibes with 45 runs scored, 51 ribbies, 11 homers, 11 steals, right? Doesn't that seem like it should add up to a little better? And it would if he was getting on base a little bit more frequently. He'd be even better than he's been. But that's a playable option. He fills 4 positions for 31 on FanDuel, 2 on DK at 42. Red Sox bats way up top. Tanner Houck immediately behind. You could flip those either way you want them. I love both pieces. A's bats just slightly on the board. Luis Medina not really on the board. Roderi Munoz going for the Marlins. And we do have the Astros lineup. Fantasy Labs would like everybody to know that there is rain above the closed roof in Houston today. I love how they do that and have never fixed it over the years. You would think they would just like add the word dome to it so that it's just like, yes, I know that it's raining outside, but inside it's quite nice. It's just strange that they just throw the red warning label on top of the game. So Roderi Munoz, speaking of red warning labels, think it's going to be a bad night for him. 8 starts this year. He's given up a 7.69% home run rate on 13.1% barrels and 43.8% hard hits. You don't get much higher above the marks that we're looking for than these. 90.2 miles an hour of exit velo is his best attribute when it comes to premium contact. I think we could target him. Last time out, Munoz managed to not allow a home run. That was against the White Sox. He lasted 4 innings, struck out 2. He walked 4. He gave up 2 earned runs on 4 hits, faced 20 hitters. Not a overly efficient start. Gave up a home run, 2 earned on 5 hits over 4 2/3 at Philadelphia. That's honestly a somewhat successful start. 4 strikeouts, 2 walks. In spite of the homer, it is just 2 earned runs on 5 hits. He pitched into the 5th inning. It's not a good DFS start, but like for real life, you'll take that out of Munoz at Philly. 4 earned runs over 6 at Kansas City was a rough one. 4 strikeouts, 4 walks, 3 home runs allowed. Also allowed 3 home runs the game before that to St. Louis. Earlier in the season, he allowed 2 home runs to Cleveland back on June 8th. On May 6th, the start before that Cleveland one, he allowed 4 home runs in one game to the Dodgers. And then he had another 2 home run game. So we've got 5 games where he's given up more than 2 home runs. 2 of those were 2, 2 of those were 3, and 1 of them was 4. It is a targetable pitcher, and we have some excellent bats to do it with. I'm actually somewhat shocked that the home run numbers aren't a little bit higher, though I am noticing that Jordan's not in the lineup, so that's probably why. But I'm kind of surprised that Altuve is not above a 10. We have no track record on Munoz, right? That's a little surprising. And those numbers, I believe I updated the numbers that would have caught Munoz's home run problems within that window. Well, anyway, if nothing else, there is potentially a little bit more power than what the Astros are showing against. And I think they're a strong option for runs. They're one of the more highly implied run totals on the board at 4.93. Second overall behind the Phillies slightly ahead of the Phillies, behind the Red Sox, slightly ahead of the Mariners. Even without Jordan in the lineup, I think you could go here. Jose Altuve off the top is terrific. 5,300, 3,800 for him. He's a star. 309, 359, 463. He's created runs 34% better than average. He's got 13 home runs, 14 steals, on pace for another 25 kind of a Altuve type season. Bregman with 11 home runs on the board, up to a 107 WRC plus. Looks a whole lot more like Alex Bregman now. 4,300, 3,300. Honestly, that price is still kind of priced like the other guy that we had earlier in the season. So take advantage before that goes up. Johnny Diaz, still at a good price, moved up to 3rd in the lineup today. Catcher who is not at all expensive, hits in a similar spot to those super high-end catchers that I was talking about earlier, and doesn't provide the power necessarily that those guys do, but is a good hitter overall. 14.2% strikeouts, 3.9% walks, 45.4% hard hits. That's a good combination of factors. Those two things with that kind of a hard hit rate means there's a lot of well-struck balls in play from a cheap catcher hitting 3rd behind 2 excellent hitters who can get on base and set the table for him. And he does have a little bit of power. 7 home runs, just a 129 ISO. A lot of the home runs came very early, but he's still slashing 286, 312, 415. It's a very good option. John Singleton, hitting cleanup today does have value. 3,200, 2,500, a lefty bat against a very weak homer-prone righty. If John Singleton's going to find success, this is a really good candidate day for him to do so. Just a 120 ISO on the season, but up to a 103 WRC plus. He's hit 7 homers in 241 opportunities. 40+% hard hits is good. Just 6.8% barrels. You take what you get from John Singleton. He's very cheap at first base. You give him that much at least. Jeremy Pena at short, 42, 3,000 across sight, 7 homers, 11 steals. He's decidedly average, but he's playable. If you're building a bunch of stacks, he's playable. I don't love occupying shortstop with that, but I think he's borderline. Like, he's just, you can put him there, but it's not my favorite decision. Loperfido is interesting for 28-27. Over 87 plate appearances with irregular opportunities so far in the show. 288, 337, 450. 124 WRC plus, 2 homers, 2 steals. A lot of times you see kids, really lack success when they get infrequent plate appearances after a quick call-up. And that hasn't really been the case here. When he's been called upon, when he's been in the lineup, he's been pretty good for them. Hasn't really driven the ball as much as was expected. Still 0 barrels on the season, but he has 2 home runs. He's stolen 2 bases. 163 ISO, considering the 0 barrels, is not bad. And he's created runs 24% better than average. He's an interesting player for a cheap price. He's an outfielder on both sides. No first base eligibility, which is a shame. One day. Jake Myers for 34-27, 8 home runs, 7 steals, a mix and match piece. Trey Cabbage, Cesar Salazar, both mix and match quality down the bottom of the lineup. Salazar's been good over his 26 opportunities. He's an alternative catcher for a cheaper price on DraftKings lineups. I don't know how many times you get to him in a lineup with Jainer Diaz or just occupying either the util spot or the first base catcher spot on FanDuel, the way things fall there. But he's on the board. He's a mix and match type. Jake Bloss on the hill for the Astros. Jake, don't call me John. I think that was him, right? Oh, I changed it over here. That's right. Yeah, for whatever reason, that Fangraphs board had it as John. But Jakey here. He's made 1 start, lasted 3 2/3. Faced 18 hitters. That was against the Orioles. Struck out 2, walked 1, 2 earned runs on 6 hits. It's a less than ideal outing. Not exactly sure. I don't think that was a game that was on a slate that we had. Not exactly sure what the expectation for depth was from him when he was called up for that start. He's 23. He made 1 start in AAA after a promotion from AA. He had made 8 starts this year in AA. He actually began this season in High A. Made 4 starts in High A, 17 1/3. Had a 36.8% strikeout rate with an 11.8% walk. But again, remember, he's 23 years old. Pitching at High A, that means nothing. In AA, which is more realistic for a 23-year-old, 8 starts, 44 2/3, cut down immediately to a 21.2% strikeout rate. You can see the talent difference between High A and AA right there. 7.9% walks. Had a very nice 1.61 ERA, but a 3.98 xFIP is probably much more truthful. 3.37 FIP, if you want to split the difference. In the lone AAA start, it looks like he wasn't that good. 4 innings, a couple of strikeouts, didn't give up any runs. Maybe he was okay, but seems aggressively promoted to be here today. See if there's any blurbs that are relevant about him. Star pitching prospect? I question the use of the word star. The debut was a couple weeks ago. I didn't even notice that. That was on the 21st. Apparently, he made that debut on the 21st, and he left with shoulder inflammation in that one. So maybe that's why it was a short start. Third round pick in 2023. Oh, he's part of the combined no-hitter. Okay. 6 1/3 and a combined no-hitter in AA for Corpus Christi. No structural damage to the shoulder, but he was on the IL with discomfort. So the most recent start in AAA was a rehab start. That 1 4-inning start. So that's why that was a short start, because it was considered a rehab start. I don't really think we're going to get much more than maybe 5 out of him. If all goes to plan, he might get 5. First start back in any real sense. Shoulder issue, young kid, never pitched above AAA until that rehab assignment the other day. Feels awfully thin. He's got an ideal opponent. That's kind of the problem. That's why I'm a little bit hesitant to say that you don't necessarily want him. Because 6,200 against this Marlins team, even if we're only talking about 5 innings, that could be okay on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I feel like you probably come up shy of that quality start. I feel like you probably lack the strikeout potential. And there's also the danger of him just getting dinged by Major League hitting. There's a lot working against him even at price on FanDuel. On DK, if you get the 5, you might have a lane. It's very thin. He's right here. I do think he's probably better than Medina against Boston. Debatable about whether that $2,000 discount to Kochanowicz makes a difference against Seattle. That's probably the correct comp, saying, him or him. And for that, I would target Seattle, and I would probably take the $4,000 guy without a shoulder injury. I won't say it. I won't fully pull him off the board, but I think if I was creating a board for this on DraftKings, I would probably, if not exclude him, at least limit him in shares. Look where the public is, make a decision whether you want to be above or below, and then set a ceiling. And just keep him a little bit limited. I'm not a big believer in this being a big Jake Bloss opportunity. If you're looking at Marlins bats against Jazz Chisholm, apparently a big piece of the trade market. Word is Jazz is definitely getting traded. But top of the lineup, 4,500, 3,400. You can buy a little bit of counting stat quality. 11 home runs, 18 stolen bases, a 106 WRC plus on the season. Does have power. Does have the ability to drive the ball. Walks from time to time, but just a 325 on base. Not the best correlated scoring option from the leadoff spot. But at least you get bonus plate appearances potentially from their best player. If you build Marlin stacks, he's a priority, but you don't have to build Marlin stacks. They are, again, at a pretty low total, 3.67 against a rookie pitcher making his second ever Major League start. Shows you their quality. Brian De La Cruz, 37-28, has 15 home runs, but a general lack of quality around that. There is power in that bat for sure. 11.5% barrels, 43.9% hard hits, but everything else is a little bit shaky. Josh Bell is just shaky across the board. The output's been really limited this year. 20 points below average for run creation. Just 8 home runs across 378 plate appearances. Not a lot to love about Bell. Maybe just the low strikeout rate if we need to cling to something, but doesn't really seem worth clinging to. Jesus Sanchez I still like. I'm still a believer in the upside here. He is, we've put, I think, 7 points on that strikeout rate since I first noticed that it was exceptionally low, 200 plate appearances ago or 150. But we're still 3 points shy of last year's number. He's drawing fewer walks, which is problematic. Getting on at a sub 300 clip is not helping anything. But he's got 10 home runs, a 167 ISO. Definitely needs to be higher given a 12.9% barrel and 51.5% hard hits. Needs to find some success, needs to get a little bit more lucky than he's been. But I believe there's a good lefty power bat there, if nothing else. We see it just from time to time, but he's probably priority number 2. Jazz, then Sanchez, probably then Brian De La Cruz. And then, 4 or 5, you could easily just go 5 in a row right off the top. If you just needed a 4th, it's debatable between these two. And then if you go stretching down the lineup, you get really thin around Xavier Edwards, Nick Gordon, Vidal Brujan, Nick Fortes. Edwards, over 43 plate appearances, looks like he's okay. But I don't know how much there really is. Let me see. One home run and 5 stolen bases in 119 down on the farm in AAA. Was slashing 330, 376, 450 with a 115 WRC plus. Extreme low strikeout, low walk, a lot of balls in play type of an option. That's really what you're getting out of Xavier Edwards, though. So we're talking about like a contact-focused hitter. I almost called him Nicky Lopez, which probably would have been unfair, but I certainly don't want to. Certainly, I assuredly don't want to call him Stephen Kwan or Luis Arias or somebody like that. So let's say for now we're comparing him more to Nicky Lopez on the low end of that kind of a skill set. Andrew Benintendi, that would probably be even more unfair than Nicky Lopez would. Alex Verdugo, maybe that kind of a bat. Gordon, Brujan, and Fortes are just very skippable. Gordon does have 8 home runs and 5 stolen bases, a 164 ISO, a 77 WRC+. Brujan, 75 WRC+, 1 homer, 3 steals, 24 WRC+ for Nick Fortes, and he's pretty much lost any ability he ever had to just, randomly turn on a home run from the last spot in the lineup. He's done it twice this year in 179 opportunities while slashing 175, 203, 246, and not contributing at all. So that's a little problematic. Astros bats and pretty much nothing else. If you wanted to roll the dice on DK with Jake Bloss, you have my blessing, but not my endorsement. If you wanted to target Marlins bats, it's really just, again, 1, 2, 3 hitters. Maybe it's a 3-man as a cheap contrarian 3-man, but I really don't love it, even against this pitcher. Gets pretty thin. And the Astros, despite having some bad performances in their bullpen this year, do have some really good bullpen arms. So, feels like a thin spot to be rostering Andy Marlins. Mariners and the Angels, we already talked a little bit about Jack Kachanowicz up at the top of the show. Sounds like a hard-boiled private dick kind of a name. You can just see it like emblazoned on one of those smoked-out window doors. Jack Kachanowicz, Private Eye. It was late in the evening in Los Angeles, and she came into my office. My name is Jack Kachanowicz. I'm a private eye. I didn't know what the dame would want. Didn't know how deep involved I would get into the inheritance scandal. Anyway, 4,000 on DraftKings. You can roll those dice. It makes a little bit of sense at that price, given how bad the Mariners have been, how super targetable they've been all season long. Like we talked about up at the beginning of the show, though, we do not have good results, and this is another pitcher who has never pitched above AA until today. He's still not done it yet. When he takes the mound today, it will be the first time he's ever pitched above AA. Was bad not bad, but was not exceptional over 16 starts in AA this year. 20.1% strikeouts, 5.9% walks, 4.55 ERA against a 3.33 xFIP. The 3.30 xFIP is good. Everything else is not overly appealing. In 16 starts last year at 22 in AA, 6.53 ERA, 4.86 xFIP, 17.7% strikeouts, 7.1% walks. Not overly appealing outside of just gimme 4 innings even. I don't even need the win bonus at 4,000, honestly. It's a free square, just a couple of points, and we're off and running. You'd like the win bonus. You'd like the 5 innings. You'd like a complete game shutout with 12 strikeouts. Sure. Not going to get it. But I think he's maybe got some upside out to like 5 innings, a couple of runs scored against, but maybe he strikes out 2 or 3 along the way, and for your money, you're fine. On the other side, Luis Castillo is downright appealing against a limited Angels squad. 21.1% strikeout rate for this projected version of the Angels lineup. I'll see in a second whether we have it. That's going up against his quality of depth in most of his starts, plus a 24.3% strikeout rate on the season. Right around the average for stuff via Stuff Plus, but a very effective pitcher even with that, average-ish kind of arsenal. 3.72 ERA against a 3.85 xFIP, a 12% swinging strike rate. Giving up a little bit in terms of premium contact, 9% barrels, 40.5% hard hits, 89 and change miles an hour of exit velo on a fly ball trajectory. It's yielded some home runs this year. He hasn't been completely tragic. The earned run high is just 5 on the season, but he's given up 5 twice. He's given up 4 times. Granted, 3 of those times were in his first 3 starts of the year. March 28th, April 2nd, and April 8th. He gave up 4 runs in each of those starts. Then had a stretch of, call it 10 starts where he gave up 2 or fewer runs in every single one of them. Only 1 time did he fail to get the quality start. That's because he only pitched 5 innings in that one. Had 1 5-run game against the Royals at Kansas City. Came back with a strong one against Texas. Then another 5-run game at Cleveland. And honestly, both of those are somewhat forgivable, given the nature of those two teams this year. A 4-run game against the Rays is a little less forgivable. And then after those, a 3-run game against the Twins, where he only struck out 3, was a little bit limiting on June 30th. And then on the 5th, he went 6 2/3, 8 strikeouts, 2 walks, gave up a homer, but just 2 hits, 1 earned run against Toronto. Overall, Luis Castillo is still a very, very good pitcher, and the Angels are not the Guardians. They're not the Royals. Maybe they're comparable more to the Rays, who did score 4 runs against, but there's nothing obviously predictive about that. It just wanted to run down some of what the numbers look like, because you see the 3.72 ERA, the 3.85 xFIP, and you start thinking, all right, maybe it's a diminished version of Castillo. I think it's more happenstance that just added up over a sample here. And if you stretch this out, give him another 90, 100 innings or so, I think we normalize in this direction. The 3.81 xFIP is already right in line. I think the results, though, the ERA kind of normalizes back down. The xFIP might come back down, maybe not to that kind of a territory, but I think the trajectory is in a good direction for Castillo. Happy to take shares. If people are scared off by perceptions of recent performance flaws, so be it. That makes him more appealing. 93, 92, it's kind of cooked into the price as well. There's a little bit of concern in those prices. I think there's a little hesitation in those prices. So to me, that makes him very, very appealing here. If I'm grabbing bats, it's probably Mariners and their healthy total. They were the 4th highest implied total on the board at 4.81. Definitely kind of interested against Jack Kochanowicz. But at the same time, they've been really, really bad. They've been really difficult to trust. And it's not just in a results-oriented, they've burnt me for DFS, but they're a good team kind of a way. This is not a good baseball team. We called it out day one, show one, that this team might underperform this season. And man, have they underperformed. I didn't think they were going to be this bad. But they have been really atrocious this year. The average on base for this squad right now is 304. Let me see if we got the actual lineup. Doesn't look like. So a 304 average on base for this version of the lineup. An average slug of 368 with an average of 220. They've been bad. Downright gettable. So while it doesn't necessarily push Jack Kochanowicz on me, I'm hesitant to really trust and really load up on Mariners, or at least hesitant to tell you guys to do so. There is appeal. There is the potential for some home runs. So you've got Cal Raleigh at 10 plus in the home run model. Julio, with all his struggles, still has 9 long balls on the season, but just a .097 ISO and just a 6.31 in the home run model. Luke Raley and Mitch Garver both 7 plus, but both also 30+% strikeouts. A lot of zeros out of those kind of players. It's just a string of even if Cal comes through, was anybody on base? Even if Julio happens to come through, did it matter? Did it amount to a big inning, or was it just an individual who performed well? So you get 18.7 FanDuel points out of him because he hit a home run, and then you get 3 zeros in the other 3 spots from Cal Raleigh, Luke Raley, and Ty France. It's a really limiting team. If it all comes together on the right day, of course, you catch that rising tide effect. But I think a lot of people are going to chase that against a pitcher they've never heard of, with a very inexpensive team, with a high run total that probably is getting a little bit overrated across the industry as far as their quality and as far as the reliability for DFS, the ability to turn the lineup over and continue sequencing. Sequencing is a big, big part of run creation in baseball and DFS scoring. So a lot of concerns about Seattle. With all of that, all the reasons I said that the public is probably going to go there a little bit are actually true. There is a high run total. They are cheap. There is a little bit of believable quality, previous seasons of believable quality. So you could argue both sides very effectively. I think I lean toward probably get under the field while having some Mariners. JP Crawford has been very mediocre this season. Actually, he's been flat out bad. There's no reason to give him even mediocre. 204, 303, 336. Creating runs 11% worse than average. 41-28 across sites. He's not expensive, but he hasn't been good. Mitch Garver for 38-28 has 12 home runs, but he's way sub Mendoza, sub 300 on base, just a 90 WRC plus. Luke Raley for 42-27, believable lefty power. 42.9% hard hits, 8.3% barrels, but a 32.3% strikeout rate. Does put a lot of balls in play, even with the high strikeout rate, because he only walks 3.1% of the time. A 186 ISO is good. 110 WRC plus, 10 points above average. 10 homers, 6 steals, and 254 opportunities is not bad. He's probably been their best player this year. Julio, 5,100, 3,000 is just absurd to say that Luke Raley's been anybody's best player, but it's kind of true. Julio, 9 homers, 18 steals, a .097 ISO, a 90 WRC plus. He's been completely lost. 9.8% barrels, 47.5% hard hits if you need something to cling to, but we're getting desperate with Julio at this point. I'm honestly stunned that DraftKings still has him above 5,000, the way they've been pricing everybody else who's underperforming. Raleigh's just good for home run upside, monster premium contact, very cheap at catcher for a guy who does have 17 home runs, a 201 ISO this year, but really limiting in a lot of ways. Hovering around the Mendoza line, sub 300 on base, 32% plus strikeout rate. It's a problematic option. Ty France just underperforming anything that he's ever done in terms of being a quality stick, good hit tool, good on base option. This year he's hit 8 home runs in 318 opportunities, a 129 ISO, 1 point above average for run creation. Everything else has been decidedly bad. He's just cheap at first base. Not ideal. Polanco, 33-25 across sites at second base, is definitely a playable option for a cheap price if you're going to Mariner stacks, but it's just on faith. We're sub Mendoza. We're below a 300 on base, .091 ISO, a 74 WRC plus, just 5 home runs, 33.2% strikeouts. He's been largely lost this year. I just think it's a spot where you're filling second base cheap, and really it's only because he's at second. If he was at third base, that would be pretty much unplayable. Josh Rojas for 37 is difficult to play on DraftKings. At second and outfield on FanDuel for 23, maybe you get a little bit more Rojas. He has 2 points above average for run creation. We're just talking about a get on base and provide correlated scoring type option most of the time. 4 home runs, 6 stolen bases, a limited producer of counting stats. Dylan Moore back in the lineup, 8 home runs, 16 stolen bases out of him over 266 opportunities. That was one of the stronger 266 opportunity stretches of Moore's career. He does fill 4 positions on FanDuel, 2 on DraftKings for an economical price. But you're talking about the bottom of the lineup. If he climbs the lineup once we get the confirmed version, he gets a little more appealing. But it's still a really limited and I think going to be somewhat popular Mariners lineup. I do think they're playable, but I think from a game theory and from a baseball perspective, we might want to trend away from them or at least undercut the public numbers on them. If they go off, if they get there, if they break the slate, sorry. On the Angels side, Anthony Rendon, still dead min priced on FanDuel. 3,800 on DraftKings. That's a little bit of a price disparity. I agree with FanDuel. Anthony Rendon sucks right now. No home runs, 3 stolen bases, a 75 WRC plus in his 96 chances, and just doesn't want to be here. Nolan Shanuel for 35-28, a limited option off the top. Hits left-handed. That's the best thing he's got going for him against the righty. But pretty limited. Maybe puts a couple balls in play against Castillo and screws him up that way, but not an overly appealing DFS option. Taylor Ward for 44, 3,000. Now we're talking a little bit. 14 home runs, a 177 ISO. That needs to be a higher ISO, given a 14.5% barrel rate, 44.4% hard hits. Ward is, if not their best player, their second best player. I keep going back and forth between him and Logan O'Hoppe, the catcher, a couple spots away. But those two are top priority bats if you're stacking this team up. And you're really just buying power if you're going to the Angels. Kevin Pillar, Brandon Drury are cheap. Inexpensive right-handed veteran. Bats in the heart of the lineup is really all you're getting there. Pillar's been the better of the two this year. 267, 331, 466 with a 123 WRC plus, 7 homers and 7 steals. That's a strong stretch of production over 179 plate appearances, but it's already started to cool off a little bit. If you didn't catch it when it was going on, you're probably not going to get all that much out of him going forward. You'll get the occasional good day, but I don't think he continues the torrid stretch that we saw earlier in the year, and I think it's already kind of indicated by those numbers. Drury's just been bad this year. Lost his power, hasn't really hit the ball well over 153 opportunities. OHOP for 4,300, 3,000 across sites is easily appealing if you're going to this team. Absolute priority bat if you're playing stacks of Angels. 14 homers, a 207 ISO, 130 WRC+. Moniak and Guillorme at the bottom of the lineup are not good DFS options. Moniak does have a little bit of pop, a little bit of ability to steal a base if he happens to get on base, but he's only doing that at a 245 clip. He's created runs 43% worse than average, 5 homers, 5 steals over 241 chances, and then Guillorme is really only a defender. The interesting bat down lineup is Zach Neto. 39-28. He's got 12 homers and 14 stolen bases, a 182 ISO, 103 WRC+. If you remember last year, he was the first kid from that draft class to get called up last year and had a pretty decent little stretch to begin that season, and then kind of immediately cratered because he was just, had been drafted same year and was, rapidly, or just the year before, and was rapidly promoted up to the show and was probably overmatched. But it does seem like through the course of this first half of this season, Neto's kind of found his footing. I don't think he's bad. There's a chance that he's actually good. So I would just like to see him hitting up here somewhere. Honestly, he could, maybe not lead off, but he could hit second through fifth somewhere and probably help this team a little bit more than he is hitting eighth. So something to watch there if you get him in a better lineup spot. But hitting eighth, it limits his appeal somewhat. Luis Castillo, easy at the top, followed by Mariners bats, followed by Angels bats, which is really pretty limited and I don't really like that much. And then probably the Jack Jakanowicz $4,000 darts. But again, if you're more inclined toward that kind of a play on DraftKings, you can certainly move that up the ladder as much as you want to. Another certainly. Last game up, which is good because it's 5:16 and this slate starts at 6:05. So I've got to get this through this quickly and then get this updated. Best pitching matchup of the day. 8-run total on the board there, 4.12 on the Brave side, 3.98 on the Diamondback side. We've got Max Fried for just 8,800, 9,100. He's got a 21.2% strikeout rate over 102 innings in 17 starts this year, a 3.18 ERA with a 3.43 xFIP. Max Fried is very, very good at keeping the ball in the yard, very good at inducing weak contact, missing barrels, limiting launch angle, inducing very weak contact. 85.4 miles an hour of exit velo is spectacular, and he's been that guy over time. This is just very weak contact, very low average launch. You get not only ground balls, but weak ground balls out of Max Fried most of the time. He's also got a really strong ability to pitch deep into games. You get complete games. You get 6+ innings out of Max Fried, a bunch. He's got 2 complete games on the season already. Several 7-inning starts, an 8-inning start in there. Most of the other starts are 5+. He's got a 13 strikeout game that came in 7 innings. He got a 9 strikeout game on the board. He does have upside despite big strikeout games. That might not necessarily be in the cards tonight against a fairly low strikeout Diamondbacks team, but he can go find him when he needs to. So he's a very high-end pitcher. I don't mind the prices at all. I think he's very fairly priced here. It's just not the most ideal matchup. The Diamondbacks are somewhat frisky against lefties from time to time, so you can see some of the downside. But on a slate like this, Max is easily playable from the middle of the board at those prices. I do like Fott a little bit better, given the strikeout upside. Braves lineup, the projected lineup, 24.4% strikeout. Same group of hitters, 23.8 last year. Fott coming into this one with a 22.4% strikeout rate, a 5.8% walk rate. By and large, he's been very good this year. He's run into a few bumps along the way, but it's nothing like what he did last year, and most of this was in that first half of last year. Gave up a ton of home runs. You can see the 11.7% barrels, 43.6% hard hits, more than 90 miles an hour of exit velo, and a 5.23% home run rate. That was difficult to rescue when he came back up and was tremendous down the stretch, but he's definitely made improvements in that regard this season. 6.9% barrels, basically cut the barrel rate in half. 15.1 degree average launch. We're still at a fly ball trajectory, but we've taken a few degrees off of it while cutting exit velo by about a mile an hour and kind of a crucial mile an hour. Remember, we look for 90+. Getting that down to 89 helps quite a bit. Getting this from 43.6 down to 39.3. We usually look for 40 there. So he's made some strides. He's given up a few homers along the way, but it's nothing like what it was last year. Some of last year is still cooked into the model here. You've also got home run hitters in this lineup up and down, even with some underperformance this season from some of them. There are some threats for power against Brandon Pfaadt. It could definitely be a day where he comes out gives up 3 earned runs on 2 home runs, 5 hits, but strikes out 8 or 9, gets through 6 innings, gets the quality start anyway. If they happen to win the game, so much the better. I can see a good day for Brandon Pfaadt. 8,100, I think he's probably going to be in my lineup on FanDuel. 7,300 on DraftKings is downright cheap. That is a steal for this pitcher. Even if it doesn't work out, just using him at that price is a steal. Justin Steele can pair with him. You get a double steal in that. Max Fried pairs with him. You could get really cheap, like I was saying up top of the show, and go that, 73.69, and just have a little faith in Albert Suarez. You can pair him with Nestor or Nola. There's a lot of ways to construct pitching today, even on a kind of middle-of-the-road pitching slate. A lot of directions to go. To do these frequently discussed teams real quick, because we do got to get out of here. It's 5:20. Jared Kelenic having a really good year up at the top of this lineup, really has pulled his career together. I think going forward, we've got a pretty good player on our hands. He's doing a lot of the things that he had always done well, and he's managed to hit for a little bit better average, get on base a little bit more, and contribute a little bit more frequently. He's got his 10 home runs, his 5 stolen bases for counting stats as well. Ozzie Albies has underperformed so far this season. Part of it was due to brief injury absence. He's been more limited for hard hits and barrels this year. It's resulted in 8 home runs and 7 steals. I love the go-forward upside and the any given slate upside from Albies. 52.37. He's still roughly full price, a little bit cheaper than normal on DraftKings. FanDuel is about where he normally is. Austin Riley also a little bit cheap on DraftKings at 51, and Matt Olson is definitely cheap for who he's been over the last, say, 3 years at 5,000 on DraftKings. So you get a little bit of a discount around the Braves' underperformance this year. All 3 of those guys have underperformed the start of the season. Riley's mostly pulled it together. He's up to 12 home runs, a 199 ISO, 121 WRC+, slashing 259, 332, 458. Good third base option, 30-plus home runs each of the last 3 years. Olsen still kind of bouncing along, does have 13 home runs, but just a 183 ISO is uncharacteristically low for him. 237, 317, 420. He's a better power bat, and he's a better hitter than that. Strikeouts are up a little bit, walks are down a little bit. It's been kind of problematic there. Marcell Ozuna leading the team with a 14.61 in the home run model, one of the highest ranked on the entire slate today. He's got 24 on the season, a 272 ISO, a 161 WRC+. It's obviously tremendous. He is expensive, but he's worthwhile against a pitcher. If you're stacking up Braves where you're looking for home run upside, he's worthwhile. I think I'm going to be more on the Brandon Pfaadt side of that equation, but Ozuna would be a high priority bat in lineups where I don't have Brandon Pfaadt. Even as an individual, honestly, if you've got a lot of money to spend at the end of a lineup and one outfield spot to fill, that would be a good click as an individual one-off. There's a ton of any given slate upside. Adam Duvall, Eddie Rosario, we've seen better from both of those guys, but they both do have power in their bats. They're both sub 300 on base so far, both sub Mendoza over exactly 246 plate appearances apiece. Even if you put their 2 seasons together, it wouldn't be great. 15 home runs would be all right, but you'd be talking about 500 plate appearances. So not great output. Matching 143 ISOs, a 65 WRC+ for Duvall, a 52 for Eddie Rosario. Sean Murphy does have a lot of pop from the catcher position for a fair price. Orlando Arcia has been pretty lost at shortstop. We'll see if he's in the lineup today. If you go to the Diamondbacks, I don't think it's a great idea today. If their upside is one of those spots where it feels like there's they put 5 runs on Max Fried. One guy had a good DFS day. 2 guys were okay, but weren't enough to win you a day. And the 4th guy that you had in your lineup, or the 4th and the 5th guys, gave you 0 or 3 points or whatever. I don't think it's a day where they go out there, hang 10 runs on Max in the first 3 innings, chase him out of the game, and then go off against the bullpen, and everybody's got a great score. Feels a little bit thin as a DFS option. Good group of hitters. I like Ketel Marte off the top, 5,400, 3,600, 18 home runs for him, a 223 ISO, creating runs 36% better than average. Randall Grichuk, if he's hitting second, is appealing, 32.25. He's cheap. 3 home runs, a 162 ISO. Probably more of a correlated scorer, but does have the ability to hit the ball hard, get it in play. He's low strikeout, low walk. So you're talking about a decent number of hard hit balls for a very fair price. Lourdes Gurriel, 42, 3,000, has a lot of upside, 266, 298. Needs to improve the on base. That'll drive the WRC+ up, but he's got 13 home runs this season. an effective striker of the baseball. Christian Walker, 52-37, premium first base bat with a lot of power, 22 home runs at 240 ISO this season. Absolutely sign me up for some of the premium contact. If I'm going to Diamondbacks, he's probably my first click. Gabriel Moreno is cheap at catcher. He's a moderate option. He hasn't been great this season, but he's kind of picked up the pace a little bit recently. He's up to 251, 333, 379 with a 103 WRC+. Junior Suarez has been completely lost all season. 8 home runs, a 137 ISO is not what we're looking for. Cheap third base power, but that's the power he might have left behind 2 seasons ago. Araldo Perdomo, Alec Thomas, and Kevin Newman. Perdomo's the most playable out of that group. Decent on-base option. Kind of like him better as a wraparound hitter from the 9 spot than I do as a 7 hitter, though. Let's move Alec Thomas and Kevin Newman up and give him the 9 spot so I can bring him back around to the top of the lineup more easily. That's what I want from Araldo Perdomo. Newman can do that sort of thing, but it's lower end. Every now and then he hits a home run or steals a base and he gets involved. He is slashing 286, 318, 395 over 198 opportunities, but he's never sustainably been a good player, so pretty skippable down lineup. This goes Max Fried, Brandon Pfaadt, or Brandon Pfaadt, Max Fried, pretty much a tie. Braves bats above the Diamondbacks bats, though. Any one of those 4 corners is playable. I think I lean a little bit more toward pitching than bats in that one. To do this real quick, because we got to get out of here. Excellent option against the A's despite the good hitting conditions. Excellent option against the Angels, and if he gets a little bit underowned because of some perceptions of struggles, that's to our benefit. The lower owned he goes, the more I want him. Nestor Cortez, playable against the Rays. Good enough to beat them, good enough to find some quality strikeout numbers against a fairly high strikeout scuffling kind of a Rays team. I'm not the biggest believer overall in Nestor being like an above average pitcher, though, when it's all said and done. Aaron Nola, tough matchup against the Dodgers, but he's Aaron Nola. I have tons and tons of faith in him. I think he could absolutely win the day from that spot. I just wish he was a little bit discounted on FanDuel. He is a little bit discounted on DraftKings, more playable over there. Fought, again, from a great price by comparison to everybody immediately around him. It just stands out if you only look at the conditional formatting. Take everything else out. Just be like, all right, that yellow-green kind of guy right there is similarly projected and way less expensive than everybody else. I'm going to roster him. And then like you take the cover off and you reveal who it is. And you're like, oh, no, Brandon Pfaadt against the Braves. But that's the kind of option we're dealing with. And sometimes that's the right way to make a decision. Just black this shit out and pick it based on what's over here. Because this is honestly what really matters. It's not so much the names. The matchups, of course, matter a little bit. And that's what feeds this. But this is the key info over here. Not who these guys are. Not the name recognition or any of that. Justin Steele is very good. Just a tough matchup against the Orioles. 89, 8,000. Any concerns about the matchup, at least on DK, are baked into that price. You get a couple hundred in savings from where Steele could be, but a very tough opponent. Max Fried, love the option against Arizona. Just, it's a fair price, 91.88. Doesn't really stand out price-wise, but easy enough to play. Could go out there and give you a very solid, 8-9 inning start. Suarez is another pitcher that is really interesting for the discount. 83 on FanDuel is playable, but I prefer Pfaadt for 200 less. 69 on DraftKings, probably could lean that way for 400 less than Pfaadt. I think that is a somewhat interesting pairing to at least click together and see what you can combine bats-wise underneath those two pitchers. Because I tell you what, if that doesn't come through and that doesn't come through, or even if they have just medium strength games for the money, there's nobody else that really stands out as a, like, that guy's definitely going to get it done. If these guys fail, that guy's going to be the one that gets there. That could be Pfaadt. That could even be Suarez. And that is a very cheap $7,100 a piece if you average it out, $14,200 for your 2 pitchers. That leaves you a solid, $20,800 to build your bats with on DK? That's not bad. Shane Baz against the Yanks, another spot where it's just, kind of a challenging matchup given a few of the hitters in that lineup. But the Yankees lineup has been extremely limited lately. There are strikeouts in there. I could see Shane Baz having a successful 6-inning day. 8,000 on FanDuel is playable, 7,200 on DraftKings, downright appealing, and could be a little bit of sneaky strikeout upside there. Landon Knack against the Phillies, I'm really skeptical about the success there. Roderick Munoz against the Astros, I'm even more skeptical about the success there. Pretty difficult to envision succeeding with him at 6,500 on even as a dart throw. Jake Bloss is probably the more appealing dart throw between the two at 6,200. Certainly more so, damn it, one last certainly for the show. Most definitely more so than Luis Medina against the Red Sox. Where it gets interesting is around the $4,000 price for Kachanowicz. as discussed, I'd probably go to that over the $2,200 more expensive Jake Bloss coming off of a shoulder injury, making his second ever major league start. The matchup is equally strong either way. Miami, Seattle, there's not that much difference between the two. Seattle's actually got more strikeouts. So for the cost savings, I'll take the guy without the shoulder injury on DraftKings. He's not available on FanDuel anyway. I wouldn't be dipping down to this level on FanDuel, though. I don't think those guys are playable over there. That is that, gang. There's one last look at the existing version of the home run board. Now let me get the hell out of here so I can get everything updated before this slate starts in 35 minutes. You guys absolutely rock. Appreciate all the likes, the thumbs, and the thank yous, and the chat, and everything in there. Monty, I don't know the answer to that question, man. If they didn't lower him below, what did it take for Julio's price to fall below 5,000? The fact that they've had all those other guys down below 5K based on similar kinds of struggles, or even lighter struggles, really surprising that they've got him up there. But anyway, best of luck to you too, Monty. I appreciate it, buddy. Appreciate all you guys. You absolutely rock. Friday show tomorrow, and then the weekend. So check back tomorrow for more. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. I'll see you.